Good morning. Welcome to Harris Hall. Welcome to the August 29th version of the Board of County Commissioners regular meeting. Good morning, Mr. Markowski.
Good morning.
Been well today?
Great, thank you.
It's a great day, thank you. We'll move directly into the agenda today, and we have adjustments to the agenda. I have one, which is we will be pulling item 7A from today's agenda to be considered at a later date. So 7A will not be on today's agenda. Ms. Markowski, any adjustments from you?
That's
to
it.
the board? Seeing none, we'll move along to emergency business. Mr. Markowski.
We don't have any today.
And to the board. I'm seeing no emergency business this morning. All right, we're rolling. Then we'll move along to item 3 on our agenda, which is public comment. We'll be entertaining public comment from people present in Harris Hall and also from anyone who may be online wishing to provide 3 minutes of public testimony. You'll have 3 minutes. If you're in the Harris Hall, keep an eye on the clock on the wall. It'll count you down from 3 minutes after you have introduced yourself. And at 3 minutes, the mic will be silenced, and it won't be silenced, but we'll ask you to step down, and we'll move along to the next speaker in line. We have a lot of people signed up this morning, so we'll ask that I'll be calling the next speaker and then the following speaker. Please be prepared to step to the mic immediately when it's your turn, and we'll go in order. And today, the first person we have for public testimony in Harris Hall for 3 minutes is Warren Beer, who will be followed by Catherine Beer. And for all of you, please correct my pronunciation of last names if I'm incorrect.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please take action to authorize the construction of a multi-use
I am sorry,
stadium.
Mr. Beer. Diana, can you start the clock again, please? And would you introduce yourself? And I apologize for not stating that out loud.
Sure. My name is Warren Beer, and I am a 3-year resident of Eugene. I live up in the Santa Clara neighborhood, and I was a 40-year employee of the U.S. government and was a public service, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate all the work that you do. I know it's a huge challenge. And I want you to seriously consider authorizing the construction of the new multi-use stadium for baseball, concerts, and other community activities. I've been going to baseball games here in Eugene for only the last few years since I've lived here. I have seen such joy from children's faces. I've seen parents, grandparents holding their children's hands. I've seen people of different faiths, political parties, socioeconomic status, sitting side by side, speaking with one another, laughing with one another, forming new relationships in such a way I have never seen in any other forum. Eugene is a truly diverse community. You have so many different types of people. At PK Park, where the Eugene Emeralds play, you see everyone come together, and they have one thing in common, and that is their love for baseball. They set everything else aside, and they're able to love one another for at least that 2.5 period of time while they're there. Please do not let the opportunity for building these relationships fade away. If the team leaves, you will never be able to replace what we have. You'll never create new memories that families and friends and this community create. I have heard so many people lovingly recall their memories from Civic Stadium. You've heard it too. You've heard it more than I have, I'm sure. And what do they say? They say how much they enjoyed themselves, how many memories they made there from generation to generation to generation. Are you going to be the ones that stop these memories from being made? Please don't let this happen. And there's so much more than just baseball that can happen at this multi-use facility. And don't lose this opportunity to create a future for the children and for their children. Thank you for all that you do for the community.
Thank you, Mr. Beer. Catherine Beer will be followed by Heidi Ringus.
Hi, everyone. I'm not really a speaker, but here I am, and thank you for your job. I'm his wife, and with the baseball stadium, besides having a concert stadium. I'm a traveler, or used to be, now I live here. My grandparents, Grandpa Bab used to take me to the games when I was little to come up to visit. So I have those stories and memories from my family as well. But as Warren said, just seeing people together really makes a difference. But I want Eugene to be, it's a beautiful city. Look at what we have here. We have the arts. We have so much. Keep baseball in. Have a concert hall so people come to us, and they come to Matthew Knight's right now. They come to the Holt Center for shows. I want more shows. I want more business in here. I think we can make more money and become vibrant, and that's what I want part of Eugene too. Besides, I love baseball, and we've got to have something to have fun that's inexpensive. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beer. Next is Heidi Ringus, who will be followed by John Profit.
My name's Heidi Ringus. So did you know that LMD's records are scattered across 3 different websites and wholly incomplete? We found the 2000 statement of the plans going to the state for clarification and the permit granted to wire the house residential. We have 12 years of records, permitted inspections, past work done to residential code. We found the records of 2017 LMD Steve McGuire, inquiry of the sunroom and 4th floor going to deferred submittal, additional info received, and updated, approved on 8/15/17. We're being told that all of that is irrelevant, that LMD's own records are irrelevant, and that everybody prior to the people there now were incompetent, including the guy telling us that because he was the last person to sign the extension for the residential permit. John Webster signed the last extension. So, we found Steve McGuire's notes from May 20th, 22, of John coming in to sign the certification for the as-built. We asked for a copy. They refused to give it to us. They told us to go make a public records inquiry. We also asked for the calculation as to how they came up with $780 a day fine. She said, no, you'll find out at the appeals hearing. You cannot deny people that kind of the information of how you calculated the fines. Okay, so we're being told that their own records are irrelevant in lieu of their own opinion. So when did the rules change that they're allowed to just ignore the record in lieu of their opinion? Because I'm of the opinion everybody should make $1 million, you know? So, and I've heard all of you say that you're working hard to solve the homeless crisis. Well, how about starting right here, right now, and preventing these people from becoming more homeless people in this crisis? You can do something today, please. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Ringus. John Profit will be followed by Amanda Porter.
Hi, my name's John Profit. The first thing I want to do is apologize to Commissioner Farr. I had a senior moment last time and couldn't remember his name. I blank out from time to time, and so I seriously apologize for not giving you your proper title. The items in this folder are the ones that show that the Land Management Division are wrong and go out of their way to sabotage me, to stop me from any way to complete my house. Meeting a week ago with Mr. Webster and George and Amber, they insisted I get a commercial permit, and they said to start that you have to go talk to the senior planner. I went and talked to him, and he said no. He gave me a choice of things if I want to go commercial. They are, I can have a boarding house up to 16 people. I can have a convent. I can have dormitories. I can have frat or sorority, or I can have a monastery. My house is single-family residence. They're out of control. Anyway, I don't know how you could pick any one of those choices. My house is residential. Please make them reinstate my permit. Stop the insanity. Also, I believe Section 3 in the Lane Manual says that I have the right to request a hearing in front of you, and therefore I am asking now to have that made possible. Directly to the Chair of the County Commissioners. And I will leave the rest of this. This, again, is just my building permits. It's the electrical permit that was granted residential after it went to the state, and then their harassment later on, and they added that word to the second noncompliance, which says commercial sprinkler system. The first one didn't say that, or Jet Industries, who has 100 projects going in Oregon, would have made it a commercial sprinkler system. And I told them on Monday I'd call Jet. I asked them to re-engineer the thing to make it commercial, and I'll pay for the difference. They don't have to rip out anything they've done. They just have to add the sprinkler system to the garage and a different tank. At any rate, please help me.
Thank you, Mr. Profit. Amanda Porter will be followed by Karen Ramos.
I am Amanda Parker. I am a local realtor in the area. John's had several years of battling this, and so as a backup plan, he has reached out to me to assist him in a potential sale of his home if we can't get things resolved. So we've listed the property, and I received a call from Amber at your building department yesterday, basically wanting to instruct me on how my listing needs to be presented. How my property description is, she feels incorrect, and how she feels that I need to add certain things to the description to tell prospective buyers. I quickly corrected her and let her know that there are certain things in there. It's just in the private comments. And she asked me why she couldn't see that. I said, well, you're not going to see that because you are not a licensed realtor and you're not part of our MLS. So until you are, that's when you'll see that. And anyone that calls to inquire about the property, that agent is required to disclose any additional information about it. I then received an email from her at the bottom of it, basically telling me that I need to instruct my seller, Mr. Profit, to take the house off of the market. And that is not her place. The building department does not dictate what properties get listed and who lists them and how they need to be presented. And I just feel that I have experience in this. I've done 300 transactions, and I don't feel that someone from the building department has the authorization to tell me how I need to instruct my client when they're not a licensed realtor in Oregon. So if you could take care of that, I would be greatly appreciative of that.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Karen Ramos will be followed by Dave Weinkopf.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for all you've been doing with regard to the Lane Event Center. Our company, Berg Productions, has produced home shows for over 40 years on the property. It feels like a home away from home to me. I spent between 2 and 3 weeks a year of my life on the property. We know what bathroom stalls won't lock, what lights don't work, and what door we have to kick to get out of the building. As you know, if you've taken a tour, the facility needs some upgrades. Our facility is unique compared to most in that it was chartered to be self-supporting. The clients and the fair did a great job for many years of paying the bills on the bond measure for the convention center. But as we all know, costs have escalated for maintenance and repairs, and the building is aging. I produced the spring home show where we used the expo halls for many years. The bathrooms are beyond substandard. I don't know how to describe them. As an emergency shelter, it doesn't function well for our unhoused citizens. There's not enough stalls. We need a multiplex building there that can be used year-round by every type of event, from sports to consumer flat shows to the fair, and then, of course, as shelter. Any building that goes onto that property, if the property's to serve its current mission, I think needs to have a roof. We just have too many rainy days. It's the best use of funds. It would have its highest purpose. Is there an opportunity to talk about the master plan with the public? Now better than ever. The stadium has put a spotlight on the Lane Event Center that has not been put on it since the convention center and the arenas and the hockey rink were built. I appreciate all the interest the commission has had. I think you're doing a great job of really analyzing the facts and the opportunities and the lost opportunities that we've had over the years. So I hope there will be public discussion. The kind of transparency we're seeing right now, I'm loving. A chance to meet at the fairgrounds with all the stakeholders would be wonderful, with some breakout sessions to talk about the various aspects of the consultant's report would be great. And we do need some funding, either TRT or something, to help build a little bit of, I guess, building security, so buildings aren't collapsing, so there aren't buckets in booths, that kind of thing. We're not asking for a grade A facility. You drive up and down the I-5 corridor and walk into most of the public buildings that are used for conventions or fairgrounds, and they are substantially nicer at lower rates to the tenants. We're not asking for lower rents or concessions in that regards as clients. All we want is doors that will function, lights that turn on, electrical upgrades, that kind of thing. And maybe lighted marquees outside of each building so the public knows which building they're going into would be nice. I appreciate all your work, and we hope to see you over at the home show this fall.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos. Dave Weinkopf will be followed by Jill Cole.
Good morning. Thanks for all you do. My name's Dave Weinkopf. Weinkopf Communications, I was also in media for a lot of years here in Eugene. I'm here to speak on behalf of upgrading the fairgrounds. The fairgrounds has been a treasure to our community for decades, and the fabric of our community is in part due to the fact that the fairgrounds, a county-owned property, actually exists in the city of Eugene. So that's a pretty unique thing into itself. The fairgrounds, I think, has been said needs significant upgrade. It's been on a decades-long decline. Since I first rented it almost over 40 years ago for our RV shows. We ran our RV shows, we personally did, for 34 years. Our person we sold it to is now doing it. As with Karen, all the upgrades there for the facilities are significant. Regarding baseball, there's people passionately for it, passionately against it. My view is, does it have to be either or at the fairgrounds? Can it be both and? And I would urge you to consider the master plan and some clever rearrangement of what might be upgrades for the entire facility, and including the M's stadium as a catalyst to actually bring money that you currently have never been able to find, and there's no promise that it'll be there in the future. So I'm thinking that the M's really have an opportunity for us to bring more attention to the need of the fairgrounds and to be able to accommodate all of the needs and upgrade the entire facility. You're the neighbor of the city of Eugene, and you're part of the fabric of the city of Eugene, but we all know that Eugene downtown core has really deteriorated significantly. And because of the Fifth Street Market area, the Riverfront project, the Holt Center, there's really good positive energy on one side of the city, but on the other side, not so much. I think the fairgrounds, as a neighbor of the city, has an opportunity to upgrade that side of it and begin the energy of rebuilding the core of downtown by what you could do at the fairgrounds and what you would also bring. So I'd urge you to consider not dropping the opportunity, but to continue to explore it and see how accommodating both things might really provide what everybody is looking for. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Weinkopf. Jill Cole will be followed by Rachel Beitkofer.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jill Cole. My family has lived here in Eugene for 5 generations now. I am here in support of the M Stadium at the Fairgrounds. I am the public address announcer for the Eugene Emeralds. This is a rare occurrence. There aren't a lot of women on the mic in baseball. We actually, the M's have shattered a glass ceiling because we're the first ever team to actually have an all-female press box that actually is running that show. It's very cool to see the news stories about what women can do in baseball. And so it's been very exciting. I'm very proud of the Emeralds, and I'm super proud to be a part of it. I love my job. I wanted to let you know that during the school year, I sub in 4J schools for years. I volunteer as much as I possibly can as my kids have gone through the school system. There isn't a student in our area that doesn't know our mascot, Sluggo. Sluggo comes to all of our fundraising events. He comes to do assemblies at our schools just to encourage kids to read. Kids, if they read 10 books during the school year and turn it back in, they get free tickets for their family to come to a wholesome night of family fun, which is rare to find that in our community. Things are so expensive now. It's harder and harder to come by. Each home game, I announce what's called the EMS Community Spotlight, where we bring light onto a local 501c3. Out of our 77 games that we host, a different 501c3 in our community is given a platform on our main concourse. We announce what they do. We show videos. We bring attention and light upon this, and a lot of our baseball fans have never even heard of most of the things that they do. We give them an opportunity to do 50-50 raffles and raise money, and they receive a lot of volunteers and interest in our community that way too. There aren't a lot of opportunities for that either. We also offer a place for school programs, whether it's music or cheer or dance, to perform. They perform before our games. They get that opportunity. Local dance studios and businesses, martial arts, they get to perform as well. The M's helped keep the Boys and Girls Club open in 2011. They work year-round with Children's Miracle Network, help hundreds of residents from the Holiday Farm fire. We do hope to use it as an evacuation center, the new facility. We work year-round with Relay for Life. The M's celebrating our Latinx friends. We host the Benarcas Baseballs and Pride Night, and we have National Night Out with our local police. They celebrate and honor diversity, which is super important. I just encourage you to please move forward with the stadium. Keep thinking about it. If you're wanting to kill it, please don't. Keep working with different people on how we can make this happen and keep our M's here in Eugene. It's not just a baseball team, and I wanted to let you all know. Thank you, and I appreciate all that you all do.
Thank you, Ms. Cole. Can I have your autograph? Next is Rachel Bykofer, followed by Alan McQuain.
Shorten this like usual. Hi, I'm Rachel Bidikofer. I'm a long-term Eugenian, but I just got back after 10 years expatted on the East Coast. And I want to talk to you guys about the only words that really matter when it comes to public planning: return on investment. I think several people here have made a really good point, and that's the point that I wanted to focus on. We have an opportunity. We're seeing this EMS problem, stadium issue, as a burden, and I think what we should be seeing it is as an opportunity. The West 13th area of the city has degraded badly. Like a small child that maybe your nieces or nephews or your own kids, if you haven't seen them in a while and you come back, you can see how much they've grown. Well, in the case of Eugene, when I got back, it wasn't so much a question of growth, but decay, right? And the 13th area is probably one of the bigger eyesores other than the core of downtown. And now we're going to lose the hospital on the other side of 13th Street. And I think that's important for us to recognize, because that's also going to cause an empty vacancy blight issue over there. So what I wanted to talk about is what could we expect if we rally around this project and we see the M's not as a burden, but as an anchor, right? An anchor that has the capacity to draw 2, 3, 4,000, 5,000 people into a certain area of the city 66 times a year, and what that could mean to this Lane Event Center revitalization. I think it's a huge opportunity for the county. I do think it's going to be a challenge to push the city council to find the money. We're working hard to put together this total package for the stadium funding, but I think that whatever the city and the county invest in this project, it's going to come back to them fivefold in economic revitalization. And I think we don't want to be, I spent 10 years away And one of the things that I saw was a lack of public infrastructure investment and how much that hurts a community once you get 10, 20 years down the line. The schools, the public infrastructure, the parks out east, they all suffer from lack of investment. And I think that Eugene, we don't want that to happen to us. The county is only as healthy as its heart, and the Eugene-Springfield Metro is going to be the economic engine of the county. So preserving our economic performance, making sure that we have a downtown that people are proud to come into, that is doing more than housing crime, is really, really important. And I think this is a huge opportunity for you guys to look at return on investment. What can we do to West 13th, and how will it look in 20 years?
Thank you, Ms. Bitterkofer. Ellen McWayne will be followed by Sven Berg.
Good morning, Commissioners. I didn't think I'd be back, but I do have more comments. And I appreciate Jill Cole's recent comments, but she didn't mention how she got her job. One night, she was the loudest fan in the stadium. Alan Benavides walked up and said, "You're our gal," and put her on the microphone. So I think that's cool, breaking the glass barrier. Now, last week, I had hoped that you would address more of the content of the master plan, including the recommendations that don't favor the stadium. Now, I've read the plan more than a few times. At the highest level, it has 8 big market opportunity ideas, and the stadium is ranked number 7 out of 8 and not recommended. It doesn't support the direct LEC operations, and it's unprofitable. It loses $200,000 a year. It'll need subsidies and supplemental funds. Now, in contrast, I haven't heard any mention of the hotel, which has a smaller footprint. It would be profitable and is what the TLT taxes are meant for. Now, the plan does not select the current northwest corner site where $700,000 has already been spent on design. Its large 20% footprint will remove the arena and dominate the open area, which needs 18 acres, not the reduced 10. Now, everyone has seen this color stadium design by your own pivot architecture. I use this as a guide when I walk through the fairgrounds, the middle of the fairgrounds, and I lined up the perimeter with all the existing buildings. And it is really impressive how much of the open area is actually consumed by this large venue. And it really seems like the county fair is going to lose half of its rides. The open-air stadium would have little use to LEC throughout the year. The programmable operations should be 100% controlled by the LEC, not the M's. That's what the consultant says. A baseball feasibility study and market assessment are still needed. Input is needed from LEC clients, users, and also the neighborhood, which will be dominated by the stadium. Your own consultant states, quote, "A decision as to future direction of the events center must be made before the master plan process can continue," unquote. And that would be December of this year. The board has known about these negative recommendations, but did not share them earlier, while there has been constant media pressure from the M's. By the way, everyone loves the M's, our favorite hometown team. No one wants to see them leave. But everyone is, I think, concerned about the master plan and the stadium. The funding and design choices to be decided today do not consider that your own consultant, a highly respected fairgrounds planner, recommends not building the stadium. And finally, why is the board pursuing such a huge project? Thank you.
Sven Berg is the last person signed up in Harris Hall, followed by online testimony.
Hi, guys.
Chair Farr.
I am.
Pardon me, Mr. Berg. Ms. Jones?
I apologize. We did have one more person sign up for public comment. I texted you.
In Harris Hall?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So Sven Berg will be followed by, pardon me 1 second. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Berg.
No problem.
Will be followed by Tom Williams. Thank you.
Hi, Hi, I'm Sven Berg. Family has I guess the last retail store in downtown West Eugene. I keep on hearing these statements about West Eugene being done. And I remember Rick Ski's coming to me and going, oh, you guys are like an island. You just got to be there and everyone will come around you and everything will build around you. And so I guess I'm here today to say, hi, we've been in business for over 75 years. I am a third generation immigrant family's grandson. We are the American dream, and you guys have made that happen for us, and we are so grateful to this country and this town, everyone in this room for just making our dream a reality. I had a grandfather who got away from the Nazis right in time to come to America and start this wonderful thing. So I'm here for two reasons, one personal, one professional. The personal is that when my grandfather came to America, he was that generation that we are gonna be Americans. So what did my family do? Baseball. So my dad grew up just being a huge baseball fan. He is in love with the M's, so we are in love with the M's. The M's have always been our team, our American team. And some of my favorite memories are going to the baseball game to either watch the M's play or actually watch my dad umpire some of those games. So, I mean, I've been in it the whole time. And it's just the joy that it brings this community. It brings families together. And that was totally true. I heard that many a times. You see all these different people of Eugene coming together and just having a good time. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that something we really want? You know, we're a burgeoning city. We're going to grow. We're going to get bigger. And this comes over to the professional side. We need this win. Eugene needs this win. Eugene needs something like this to finally say, hey, we're a real city. We're ready to step up. We're ready to be something bigger. And the revitalization of our area would guaranteed happen. You know, you just drive down 13th. You see just kind of rundown buildings. The fairgrounds kind of run down. You go a little farther and you see us trying to paint the building every summer to keep it fresh and looking good, and then nothing again. There's nothing down there. I can't even get a sandwich. So, I mean, we've been doing this for 75 plus years as a family. And we've just noticed that area just going down and down and down. I want this win. I want this community to get that bonus, to get that, okay, we're doing something. We're growing. We're big. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate this. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. Tom Williams. Tom is the last person signed up in Harris Hall and will be followed by online testimony. Mr. Williams.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Tom Williams. I'd like to speak more directly to the proposal you're going to face this afternoon. In other words, the choice between pausing funding for the stadium project until the funding picture is resolved, or going ahead and continuing to spend money on it in the meantime. The project status document included in the agenda for this afternoon includes an interesting figure of $300,000 a month, which is presented, I believe, as the cost of choosing option B, which is to pause work on the stadium until funding is secured. In other words, if you agree to spend another $75,000 to continue planning for the stadium, you'll actually save $300,000 a month in eventual construction costs. Sounds like a great deal, but is it true? The $300,000 a month figure was also presented during your meeting in June when this was discussed. At that time, it was explained that because inflation is causing construction costs to increase, anything that might delay construction will cause the project to cost more. We weren't told what inflation rate was used to calculate the $300,000 figure. What we do know is that because the $300,000 figure presented today is exactly the same as the one used in June, there has not been any effort made to adjust this to the current inflation rate, which is less. If they were using the inflation rate as a basis from early 2023, it's less than half that now. Secondly, inflation isn't the only factor determining future construction costs. If the long-predicted recession were to arrive, by the time the shovels hit the ground, you could have subcontractors lining up, underbidding each other, and the cost would actually be less. The point is, the $300,000 figure is presented as fact, but it's entirely speculative, almost certainly exaggerated, and is included, it seems to me, to bias your decision towards spending another $75,000 of public money on this project now. Call me old-fashioned, but I think the surest way to save money is not to spend it. Vote to save money this afternoon. Vote, take a pause, vote for option B.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams was the last person to sign up in Harris Hall. Ms. Jones, will you manage the online queue, please?
Thank you, Chair Farr. At this time, we will begin the online public comment portion. If you have signed up to give testimony online, please raise your virtual hand now, and I will call upon you in the order that your hands are raised. You will have an option when I call upon you to also be on screen, so please let me know if you would like to be on camera to give your presentation. At the 3-minute mark, I will mute your microphone and move to the next person. Our first speaker is Renee Clark, followed by Jarl Berg. Renee, I will unmute your microphone, and please let me know if you'd like to be on camera.
No to camera. I don't want to be on camera.
All right, you may begin your public testimony.
Hi, I'm Renee Clark, and I am a lifelong Emerald fan. And I want you to build the stadium because, previously really good points were made. I want to make a few more about why a stadium is great for our community. Did you know last year 136,000 people attended Eugene Emerald? Do you know that, for Thursdays at $5, you can go see a game? You can take 4 friends for $20. Where else in Eugene can you go in our community to do that? Is the hotel that's being built, is that going to be a community event center? Are you going to hold community events for our friends and family of this community? No, it's going to profit the management of the hotel. That's all that hotel's going to do. The stadium, that can be used for multi-uses. We've had concerts there. We have 501c profits there. I can't even believe, 70 years of history, you're going to let it go for a hotel? The Emeralds brings in people from all over. We have people from Vancouver, Canada, Spokane, Washington, Everett, Washington. It's just not the locals that come and enjoy our community events at the Ends games. They're so big in the community. Why would you deny that for kids? You've got Sluggo going to schools. You've got the 501(c)(3)s holding events at the games. That's all I want to say, really. Build the stadium. We need it.
Thank you for your public comments. Our next speaker is Jarl Berg, followed by Evan Laut. Jarl, I will unmute your microphone, and you may please let me know if you'd like to be on camera.
All right. Hi there. I am fine being on camera. Thank you.
All right. One moment. Let me change you over.
Okay.
You should see a button come up that will move you over, and you unmute your.
All right. 1 second here. Sorry. Technicals. There we go. All right. Is it all working?
Yes.
Great. All right. Let me know when I should start.
You may begin your public comment now.
Perfect. Hello there. My name is Jarl Berg, and I am as my brother said, a 3rd generation here in America. I'm born and raised here in Eugene, Oregon. Born and raised going to Ems games. I personally am not a big baseball fan, but my dad is the ultimate baseball fan. He was an umpire for high school baseball for over 50 years. And as my brother said, my grandfather, when he moved to America and married my grandma, they were proud to be Americans and proud to be going to baseball games and being involved in baseball. And because that's one of the few things we have here in Eugene as a national thing. So it's been a part of our lives, our whole lives. I sat next to my dad about a week ago at an M's game, and we were about ready to leave because my family had just gotten home from Germany and they were tired and jet lagged. And my dad's like, "You need to stay until the seventh inning or whatever we sing, Take Me Out to the Ball Game." And then he's proudly stood up next to us and sang it as loud as he could. And that is the antithesis of baseball in Eugene and the M's and the importance of the M's for Eugene. And we had a bunch of Canucky standees sitting next to us. So Canadians with their Canadian flag because we were playing a Canadian team. We bring people from all over the world to come and be a part of this. And with the University of Oregon being here and all those international students, it's super important to have this fun thing that people get to enjoy right here in Eugene. They don't have to travel somewhere to San Francisco or to Seattle or whatever to go see a big game. They can come and feel like they're at a big stadium and a big game right here in Eugene. And that's super important. I do know that it's important. We've got a lot of stuff going on here in Eugene, and I want to put a challenge out, not only to Lane County, but also City Council and to Alan and his team. We have an opportunity with the reimagining and redreaming up of what this space could be at the fairgrounds and with this stadium. We can also put a big challenge out to say, how do we help something that's really important right now, right here, and that's cleaning up our city. And that means supporting people who are in the houseless or homeless community. What can we do to use this space to, especially in the winter when not much is going on, how do we reimagine having potentially, the warming centers being there and showers and just things that we all take for granted? How can we initiate that into this? How do we challenge Alan with his team to actually maybe say, let's hire 20% of the people that come and work for us live in these houseless communities and help them get back on their feet again and become, citizens in our city, giving back and taxpayers. So thank you. Have a nice day. Cheers.
Thank you for your public comments. Our next speaker is Evan Laux, followed by Richard Bratz. Evan, I will unmute your microphone, and please let me know if you'd like to be on camera. Evan, you looks like you're self-muted.
All right.
There you go. Would you like to be on camera?
Yes, please.
Okay, one moment. Let me switch you over.
Do I join as a panelist? Is that what I need to do, or?
Yep. Did you just see a button that asked you to do that? Yeah, there you go. And then you will need to unmute your camera so we can see you.
Okay.
There you go. You may
Hi,
begin your public comment.
Hi. My name is Evan Laux. I'm a transplant from Chicago. I'm a multi-generation, die-in-the-wool Cubs fan. I moved here to Eugene about 12 years ago, and I knew nobody. And the first thing I was told to do was go to an M's game. And these M's games were at PK Park. And that is where I spent most of my summer. And it was a welcoming community. I want to emphasize what other people have emphasized. There's families, there's friends, there's coworkers. Everybody came together. I felt absolutely included from the moment I stepped into the place. And this is pretty big. As I said before, I grew up as a Cubs fan, and I grew up watching the Cubs with my grandfather on his lap. And to be able to have that kind of community was amazing, knowing nobody across the country. I live live near PK Park. And one of the things that has been spoken about is whether having this park, having this multi-functional facility would cause bad traffic, would cause criminal undertakings or of that nature. I have, in my 12 years being there, have never had any problems, have only had good experiences living near the park. I have several times gone past it, and they've had many outings. Just recently, this past weekend, the Jerry's had what I assume was their employees and family and friends, and they had a whole bunch of kids' bouncy houses and family stuff. I know the Boys and Girls Clubs had it the other week, and that's just in the past 2 weeks. I know there's been concerts there, and by 10 o'clock, everything has been, quieted. So I've never really had any problems with having a stadium that close. I really would like to emphasize how this has brought a community together that has prided itself on being inclusive. And with the world being divided as it is, and society being where we are right now, I think it's very important to keep these M's in Eugene and to allow them to grow and this community grow. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Richard Bratz. I believe Gwen Jaspers would like to speak too, but your hand is not raised, so I will check with you after Richard Bratz goes. Richard, I will unmute your microphone, and please let me know if you'd like to be on camera. You are self-muted right now. Richard, your microphone is muted. There you go. Would you like to be on camera?
No, thank you.
All right.
Thank you for this opportunity. I do not know much about the subject you're talking about, but I will say this. When I was, I took my kids to the M's games. I think it's very useful. It's very good to bring families together. If it's coming down between a stadium and a hotel, I'd definitely take the stadium because that's more for the community. But that's not really our issue. My issue is, where's all this money coming from? What are we doing about? I live up here in Oak Ridge. I used to live in Eugene. I've been in Lane County for 60 years. I got out of Eugene because of the homeless problem. Eugene is the #1 homeless city in the nation now per capita. What are we doing about taking care of that? Where are we going to spend our money? I look at the LTD bus. I live in Oak Ridge. I see the bus come up here, maybe one person on it has a big, huge bus. Can we be more efficient on how we operate? I look in downtown. I see on Main Street in Springfield, they're running the big bus. I mean, the accordion bus, and I only see 2 or 3 people on it. I mean, it doesn't make sense for fuel and economy if they say they want this climate change. We have climate change. We have 4 seasons. The other thing is forest fires. What is the sheriff's department? What are we doing to push to catch the people that are setting these fires? 80% of the fires, my understanding, are human caused. Some are accidentally. I think some are done intentionally. That needs to be addressed. But my main issue, I think, is election integrity. People are really fed up right now. They have no confidence. We called the Lane County Election Board, wanting to get cast votes for 2022. Federal law says they're supposed to have them for 22 months, and they do not have them. They won't give them to us. Why? Can you check into that for us? We got to get rid of the machines and go to paper ballot. Go back to the old way, the precincts, and have a one-day voting. We need to have confidence back. Right now, we don't have it. And I just keep praying to God that people are going to realize, get all this woke stuff. We're going to be American citizens, or we're going to be under communist rule. That's what is coming. You got 2 choices. And people need to wake up, and your commissioners need to wake up. You are only our support. You're the ones that are going to save us, save this county. So please, Take a look at this stuff. Spend money very wisely. We got to take care of our people. We got to take care of our resources, but we got to do it in a sensible way. Thank you very much. God bless America and Oregon. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comments. Our next speaker is Gwen Jaspers. Gwen, I will unmute your microphone. Please let me know if you'd like to be on camera. Gwen, it looks like you are self-muted. Oh, there you go. Yep, still self-muted. Gwen, your microphone is muted. Can you unmute your microphone? I'm not sure how to proceed. I do not have any other hands raised. You are our last speaker. If you can find your mute button and unmute it, we can hear you. There you go. There you go. Would you like to be on camera? Okay. Okay, one moment. It's going to ask you if you want to be a panelist, and you should say yes.
Yes, join us.
There you are, and if you want to unmute your camera, we'll be able to see you.
Oh.
There you go. You may begin your public comment.
Thank you. My name is Gwen Jaspers. I am concerned that the process of the M's baseball stadium has not exhibited the proper transparency a project of this impact to the community and its rising price tag warrant. For starters, most of us, I think I can say most of us, were given the impression the M's were providing 10 to 13 million toward the cost of the stadium. Now it becomes clear this contribution is really upfront rent for the next 20 years, as well as for stadium baseball equipment. No estimates of the ongoing custodial and maintenance costs of the stadium over these 20 years have as yet been disclosed, as far as I know, to the public, and no revenue stream found to date. As we all know, rent usually covers these costs. Another concern I have is, if my information is correct, it sounds like there will be little to no funds for new tourism development, as the recently increased lane transient room tax will be slated for the stadium project. That doesn't seem at all right or fair to the other areas of the tourism industry in Lane County. The Hillsborough Hops, a minor league team to the north of us, is contributing $75 million to the proposed $140 million brand new stadium they are building. The Hillsborough Hops are locally owned by people in their community. That project will be paid predominantly through private funds because the community owns owns the ball team and will find the money for it. In our case, the M's are owned and operated by the Elmore Sports Group Ltd, located in Manhattan Beach, California. According to my sources, Elmore Sports Group Ltd owns several minor leagues over several states and has many other complementary corporate interests, such as hospitality, facility management, and concessions. Since a reorganization of the minor league baseball in 2021, 40 communities are now scrambling for what to do with their new abandoned stadiums. We are not guaranteed an M's team in the case of something similar happening in the future. My final concern today is that the use of public tax dollars, such as the money obtained from the state legislature for this project,
Thank you. Thank you for your public comment, Gwen. So far, that is all the individuals I have signed up at this time. If you would like to, I'll return the meeting to you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones, for handling the online queue. And I'll look around Harris Hall to see if anyone else in Harris Hall wishes to provide testimony to the Board of Commissioners this morning. If so, please step forward to the mic and identify yourself. I see no one. We'll move along down our agenda then. Thank you for your testimony this morning. Very quickly, I'm a first-generation American, and I'm also proud to be an American. Next is Commissioner's response to public comments and/or other issues and remonstrance. I'll look to the board for issues, remonstrance, and comments. Commissioner Lovall.
Thank you, Chair. Great talks again. Love it when people come and do public testimonies. I have a couple of just comments that y'all made that I just kind of want to reiterate and bring us back to our minds. Ms. Karen Ramos, you said opportunities lost and opportunities need consideration. I think what's happening right now is as we get closer to this deadline and some of the emotion starts to peel away a little bit and people start to really get grounded on what they want and what they expect and maybe what they can dream with and hopefully what the county and the cities and all the people of this community can cobble together to make grand visions. I think people are really thinking better about what we're going to do day to day for this particular project as it relates to all of the projects we want in Lane County. So I think that opportunities lost and opportunities that need consideration was for me a really grounding statement. Rachel, you said that the county is only as healthy as its heart. And I thought that was an excellent statement about who we are as a county. We have a lot of heart. We have a lot of passion to help each other. We have a lot of passion to do the right thing. And I think the closer we get to this issue and start laying back some of the layers, that the heart of the matter is really going to join us all together. Because I think at the heart, each one of us want the same thing. We want the best thing for our entire community, not just for one particular entity. So I applaud you for that statement. That was a great statement. And Sven Berg, when you said your dad would umpire the games, I'm sorry for my my outburst, but I remember my father-in-law at Civic Stadium umpiring the games from the third baseline. So I thought that's what you had meant. So I can also assure you there's a lot of old people like, well, guys like myself nowadays, that has umpired games from the sidelines, and that's part of the experience of baseball that I treasure as well. Tom, you said that the surest way to save money would be to take a pause. I think you have a lot of truth in that statement. I think that statement is not just to say no or to stop, but it's to consider all the things that are possible. It's to consider the entire master plan, how the stadium fits in, how it integrates with tourism, how it integrates with how our community's needs, and what we can do for the homeless, and some of the things that, as was mentioned here, by showers and an indoor facility. I think that's the pause conversation that we all need to make. As I said before, when I was in the advertising business as a photographer, the closer you got to the deadline, the more everybody panicked about if they had the right photo. But I also learned this, that regardless of the deadline, there's always time for a reshoot. And so I'm thinking that even though this particular issue has been emotional, it's been fraught with deadlines, I think we're coming down to what we really want, and there's a little bit of time for a reshoot, I'm hoping. And then, Jarl, you said that the challenge to the county, the city, the M's, admin, we need to redream what the Lane Event Center can be. And I can't agree with you more on that. And then, Evan, you said that this particular entertainment value that the M's, this brings us together as a community that prides itself on being inclusive. And, you know, Eugene's all about being inclusive. We're all about equality and equity. And anything that we can do as a community to build that within the community, where we come together as a community to figure out what we all really want and to include those people whose voices seem like they get silent in the process, I would love to be a partner with that, and I'm open to do that anytime. And then, Gwen, you lastly said that they're concerned that the stadium was not enveloped in proper transparency. And I think now we're seeing really what people, like I said, want. I think everybody's being transparent. There's no hidden agenda, so I'm looking forward to moving forward on a grand idea, something that really, really speaks to the community as a whole, something that's maybe way outside of our purse strings, but I'm thinking we're resilient enough to find a way to get there. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovell. Commissioners, we have a 10 a.m. time certain this morning, which we are, I'm afraid, running a little bit late for. We'll continue with Ms. Mokrajewski. If it's appropriate with staff, we'll continue with this portion of the agenda, which should last about 5 minutes, then move into our 10 a.m. time certain. Then we'll continue with the commissioner comment or response. Looking to commissioners. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'll reserve much detailed comment about the Lane Event Center initiative for our agenda item this afternoon, but I do, it looks like Jill Cole left maybe, but I wanted to just appreciate her. I think, I don't want to speak for my colleague, Commissioner Buck, but as the 6th and 7th woman ever elected to the Lane County Board of Commissioners since we were established in 1851, I think we can really especially appreciate her contributions and the importance of women taking up their rightful place in all sectors. I think to be brief, I just want to say that my grief and my anger is with the people of Jacksonville, Florida, and the horrific racially motivated shootings that happened there recently. And finally, in advance, since we will be down for a couple of weeks with the Labor Day holiday approaching, I just want to really appreciate and thank all of the workers here in Lane County as an organization and as a community, and particularly thank folks active in the labor movement. We have a long way to go still to ensure fair treatment and safe workplaces across our country, really. And so just wishing everyone a happy and safe Labor Day holiday. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trigger. Further comments from the board? Commissioner Senega.
Yeah, Mr. Prophet, Ms. Ringus, I would love to help facilitate any paperwork you guys think you're missing. L&B's been very transparent with me when I ask for paperwork. I don't think that should be a problem if you think you're missing something. I know they're very on it when it comes to their permitting and the paper trail that goes along with it. As far as the M's, there's a lot of nostalgia here. I've gone 4 generations to M's games. I've gone to the You Read All Your Books game with both my daughters, and I got to go with a nephew, so that stuff is very cool. Jill Cole, that was awesome for you to bring that stuff up because it really does. Sven left, but his public testimony is a little tough for me because every time I've gone there and rented skis, I could barely walk the next day. So we're a little bitter. But thanks for all the great conversations. Tom, I completely agree. We need to look at this big picture, and I look forward to that later on today. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Senega. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I very much appreciate everybody who came to speak today. We've received hundreds and hundreds of emails on various sides of the issue with the fairgrounds. I'm going to, due to time constraints, I'll reserve my comments about that subject when we get to that on the agenda item today. But I want you to know, the public to know, that I read them. And I hear you, and we have a lot to contemplate later this afternoon. In addition to that, I want to just make the board aware, since our last meeting, we had some lightning strikes one evening. We had a lot of them, and it was basically dry lightning. We had no water really of any kind come down, and it started several additional fires in Lane County, not to mention up and down the West Coast. That sparked off a good half a dozen to a dozen fires in East Lane specifically. There is a group of them in the South Lane district where they are calling together an incident management team to address those as well. We now have the Horse Creek fire on the opposite side of the road as a lookout fire upriver in the McKenzie area. And our teams and emergency responders and firefighters are doing an excellent job, but resources are very thin now. The resources we had just a couple of weeks ago are now all on other fires, especially near the Oregon-California border. And we have felt that smoke come up this way into Lane County. We hope to see with the cooling events this week that some of those fires are contained, but the fact is we just don't have the resources that we did before. Be watching those closely, and I'm happy to make sure that I inform the board as we go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. I'll take just a couple of minutes, and I have a few more things to say, Mr. Mokrowski, but we'll push mine to the end of today's agenda. Just very briefly, I write down quotes, and I wrote down a couple of quotes. One that really I'm going to look deeply into, and it's from you, Ms. Ringus. You said, you'll be told at the appeals hearing how the fines were assessed. Told at the appeals hearing something that's pertinent to your business. I'm going to look into that very, very deeply, because to me, if there is something that you need to know up front, not when you get there. So but we'll look into that quote. The second quote I have is from Karen Ramus. I know which stalls work and which doors to kick to get out of the building. I love it. You've been around a long time. Thank you very much for that information. One last thing I'll say, I do have more things to talk about, Mr. Mokrowski, including the courage of the Norwegians. But look behind you, and you'll see construction underway surrounding the Lane County Farmers Market. That's a year-round farmers market. There's a great deal of construction that's taking place on the plaza, and it's something that we have placed a great deal of investment in, this capital investment. Later on today, Mr. Mokrowski will be talking about capital investment and watching baseball. Both of those things wrapped together in this afternoon's discussion. So with that, I see no further discussion from the board. Please stick around for the rest of the morning. We will consider the consent calendar before moving into our 10 a.m. time certain. We have before us a consent calendar, which has been considered by the Board of Commissioners. If you wish to see the items on the consent calendar online, you can view material and see everything that's been considered by the board before passing this as a single item. If anything had been, if there were need to pull anything from the consent calendar, it would have been pulled for separate discussion. Vice Chair Trieger.
Chair, I move approval of the consent calendar as published for Tuesday, August 29th, 2023.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Buck. Today's consent calendar, discussion to the motion. I'm seeing none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. And Mr. Mokrowski, we do have a 10 a.m. time certain with one item on the agenda prior to that. I believe Ms. Fifield is here from Springfield, I know that, and other people from Lane County staff. We can move council till after the 10 a.m. time certain, or we can take council announcements prior. Looks like the consensus is prior.
Yeah, my understanding is the county council doesn't have any announcements, so maybe that can be really quick. You
Well,
can dispose of that and
Then let's see. Yes, okay. The next item then is 6A, which is announcements from county council.
Good morning, Chair, Vice
Good
Chair,
morning.
Commissioners. No announcements today for the Office of Legal Counsel. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll move directly into our 10 a.m. time certain. Once again, my apologies to those of you who showed up on time for the 10 a.m. time certain. The 10 a.m. time certain is a public comment and order 23082905 in the matter of authorizing a transfer of two county-owned tax foreclosed real properties to the city of Springfield. Map and tax lot 17032741-05200, also known as 1577 Laura Street, and map and tax lot 170233340080, also known as 367 South 52nd, all in Springfield, Lane County, Oregon. And today, Ms. Mokrowski, we have with us Kelly Hancock, property manager, and we do have a public hearing surrounding this morning. But first, Ms. Hancock, as you step to the podium, and Ms. Fifield, I'm going to mention I love to catch people doing things right. And last week I caught you red-handed in the act of. We had a discussion over at the sheriff's office regarding surrounding properties that are potentially going to be developed. You provided expert information from Lane County. You listened to the testimony very well, and I was just proud to be a part of the meeting that morning. Thank you very much for that, Ms. Hancock.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Mokrowski, I'll turn it over to you.
I'll just give it to Ms. Hancock to walk you through the item.
Thank you, Chair Farr and Commissioners. I'm very excited today to bring this proposal to you. The City of Springfield has proposed to have us transfer two tax foreclosed properties to them for development of low-income housing. It seems like a no-brainer, but we still want to cover all our bases. So the City of Springfield has done some due diligence, which is pretty exciting. They worked with some University of Oregon architecture students, and they envision multi-unit middle housing developments on both properties. I should cover first, we have 1577 Laura, which has an existing structure but needs to be raised. It has a tree growing through it and rodents have been living there. And then we have a vacant lot on 52nd Street. So they looked at both properties for possibilities, worked with these incredible, bright, creative students that could see all sorts of different things happening there. They also then used the information to interview 14 local service providers, nonprofit developers, and small private developers about their interest and ability to develop the lots for the purpose of low-income housing. That really was exciting to me to think that they actually went out into the community, got some input, and I believe Aaron said that acquisition of land has been a big hurdle for them, so it makes me really happy that we can help them get past that challenge. Transferring these properties fits within the city's existing housing work and expertise and will help both the city and county meet the housing needs of vulnerable populations in the community. 1577 Laura, I'll just touch briefly on what we're looking at on both. 1577 Laura, we're looking at low-income rental housing. And the city has identified home ARP funds that could be used here. They have a process in place. It looks like this one would just be almost easy peasy. I hate to say that because we know that's not how it's going to be, but it looks that way. Then we've got 52nd Street, which is going to be looked at for low-income home ownership. So we're looking more at like a land trust type thing here, that, like what we've done at Square One. Looking to give this away on, well, I hate to say give it away, but transfer it through a creative, competitive RFP process, working with local developers. So with that, I know I've touched very briefly, but again, it just seems like, I don't know if you have any concerns or questions, but we would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Hancock. And Ms. Fifield, anything you need to add at this point in time?
I'll just reiterate, we took this to City Council as soon as the opportunity came to us, maybe 6 months ago, 8 months ago, and returned throughout the process to say, got the go-ahead to look further into it, approached the university to research, went back to developers, and every time there was just unanimous support by City Council and the mayor for these particular lots. I'll add what's unique, I think, about these that we hadn't considered in the past was with the middle housing code change in 2022, the opportunity to create 4 units on a small lot is something we hadn't been looking at previously. We've been looking at larger lots, medium density, 40 units, which while we have developers in the community used to that model, state funding is becoming more and more competitive for those developments to happen. And this feels a little more straightforward and easier to tackle to say, yes, we can put 4 lots. In the case of Laura Street, we have development funding that we can pair with it when we put it out for an RFP. And so I think it is a unique model that we haven't done yet in Springfield for low-income housing, in the case of Laura Street for our unhoused population. So council's been enthusiastic. We're excited. We feel like we've done enough research and at the same time are trying to build in some precautions that if it doesn't move forward, we'll compensate the county. So.
Thank you, Ms. Fifield. I'm going to make a comment in a few moments regarding what you just said about unique and Springfield. But at this point, I will say that we do have a public comment period listed. I have no one signed up for public comment in Harris Hall. Ms. Jones, is there anyone signed up online for public comment toward item 7B?
So far, I do still have a few people online. Let me just check with them. If you are registered online and you've signed up to give public comment on this particular item, please raise your hand and I will unmute your microphone for public comment. So far, I see no hands being raised, so we have no one online for this item.
Thank you. Then we'll presume no public comment on this particular item. I'll turn it over to the board for questions or comments on this, and I do have a couple myself. To the board, Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick procedural question. I see in here there's some legal actions you're going to need to take to fulfill clearing the properties to make them available for the uses. So my question is, if you don't prevail in that, sort of what's the anticipated timeline? Does that then have to come back to us for some action? How will we get updates to know if that's been resolved?
Great question. I don't know the timeline. I think when talking to our city attorney, they felt they'll try and pursue it themselves if it looks straightforward. Otherwise, they'll need to go out for external counsel to help. So timeline, I don't know. I think the proposal we have is that if we are not able to quiet title, then we would return the properties to the county.
So it's sort of a contingency agreement. There won't be another action that we'll need to take to reverse the order. It's because I didn't see it written into the order that if you're not able to use the property as intended, it returns to us.
I'll look to the county on that. We put it in the proposal. I don't know on the actual order.
Right, it's not in the actual order. I don't think we would need to come back to you to accept the property back. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, just if there's any future action, just trying to streamline. Really, my goal is to make sure we're doing this in as streamlined a way so that the next thing leads to the next thing and we don't create any.
Correct. I'm going to say that I don't see that we need to come back to you to accept the property back. It's in the proposal, and I don't think we do need a signature when we accept it back, now that I think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess we would need to come back to you. If it fails, then we will need to come back to the board, let you know, and that we are going to be taking the property back.
So we'll assume no news is good news in the
Correct.
meantime, and
Right,
then
we
maybe
will assume that it's going to go forward and everything's going to go as planned, unless you hear otherwise.
And then I would just request once everything really is finalized and done and it's cleared that we just get that update.
Absolutely.
So we know. Great, thank you.
And thank you for the diligence you provide on that, Ms. Hancock. Further discussion from the board. Commissioner Lovell, followed by Commissioner Buck.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I just have a brief statement. Kelly, you're just awesome. I just want to appreciate you in public. You know, I mean, you and I have talked a lot about how this foreclosed properties can be used for the highest and best good use for the county, and this is a great idea. It's a great step forward. And Aaron, just what you guys are doing with Springfield, obviously, I love Springfield, love what you're doing, and I don't see a whole lot of obstacles in the way. I think you've got things pretty well lined up, so I'm really hopeful this is going to be a success story that we can repeat over and over again. So just thank you both for diligence, hard work, and thinking outside the box. Good job.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovell. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. Often these properties come with a clouded title, which is what I know Commissioner Traeger was referring to. And some are easier than others to clear, right? Some can be really challenging. And hopefully that will be an easy process for you, knock on wood. The question I do have is I fully support this, but I did want to go back. We generally have a policy of the order in which we kind of make these properties available. I just want to make sure that we follow that particular, guidelines that we put in place. And this was, this is the next item down for us to be able to offer these properties.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
When we have these properties available, it's my understanding that we have a policy that we make them available to certain entities in a particular order.
Okay.
I remember that because I wrote the first policy way back in the day, and we updated it several years ago. I just want to make sure that we're going through the policy as it's stated, and that this is the next right thing to do.
Okay. So the policy states that we will go to the housing board first, which I did back in January of this year. And I didn't have a lot of response from that. And I also didn't get a lot of direction on that from I thought the way the policy is written, I had expected, once I presented it to the housing board, to get more response from other entities. The way the policy is written, it sounded like it was going to be a networking from there. That was my starting point. And when I didn't get a lot of response on that, I went to any of my properties that were within incorporated city limits, and I directly went to those cities because they will be the ones approving building permits, and they need to know what's going on in their own cities anyway. So I took that next step, and then I approached nonprofits. I do have some properties where they're competing for the same property, but this one, Springfield stepped right up, said this works for us, and this is going to fit into our plan. And so they were the next on the list.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. Just a couple of things really quickly. First I'll look at you, Ms. Fifield. You and I have spent a lot of time together in rooms and meetings, countless hours on the Human Services Commission and other commissions that you have very ably and very capably represented Springfield for. You've been the face and the voice of Springfield in so many venues that I've worked in through the years, and I just want to out loud thank you for that. And the other thing I'll mention is something that you said. It's a unique model that we've never done in Springfield before. You've said that a lot of times in the past, that you have unique models that you've never done before. And I've always kept an eye on Springfield. When Debbie and I were first married many, many years ago, we owned a home in East Springfield in a mobile home park in a country manor, so I grew to really love Springfield. I coached at Springfield High School, and I managed a Gray's Garden Center store in East Springfield when it was in existence. So Springfield, I'm near and dear to Springfield. I'm always very proud when Springfield steps forward and does things in a very unique manner that other jurisdictions could look at to see how things can be done. So pass that along, please, to your management staff and to your board that this commissioner is very proud of the way Springfield works. Thank you. With that, then, we have before us Order 2308-2905, and I'm looking for a motion.
I'd like to make some motion, so motioned.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Lovell and seconded by Commissioner Buck. We have Order 2308-2905. I'll open for discussion. Is there anything else that needs to be discussed before we consider this motion for passage?
I have nothing further.
Good. Well, thank you very much. There's a lot of material, if you click on View Items, that has been considered before we got to this point. So with that, I'll look to the board for discussion to the motion, and I'm seeing none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners.
Come back anytime.
You'll be seeing me soon.
Then we'll move, a reminder that we did, 7A has been deleted from today's agenda and will be considered at a future time. We'll move along to item 8A, which is a report on Lane County Parks on the local option levy. And Mr. Mokrajski, you have a panel before you today, which is going to include, once Brett Henry gets here, and Latifa Amado. Mr. Mokrajski,
Yes, that's the introduction. Brett Henry, our Parks Manager, is here, and Latifa Amado, our Equity Manager, is making her way up here. So, Brett, I think I'll turn it over to you. Great. Start?
Yeah, ready. Just it here. Okay, I think we're ready to go. So for the record, again, my name is Brett Henry. I'm the Parks Division Manager here with Lane County, and with me is Latifa Amado. She is the county's equity manager, and we've been working together with the levy, and there are a number of equity initiatives that I'll cover in this presentation, and you're presenting next. So I'll stick around for that presentation as well. So I am here to talk about the Parks levy that was recently passed. So I'm really excited to share some board updates with you. Just to kind of go over what I'm going to talk about, we're looking at the overall funding structure of parks, the operating revenue, and why we're in this funding dilemma. I want to go over some of that background. I want to talk about how we've gotten to the point where we were able to place the levy on the ballot. There was a process that we went through. I know that there's 2 new commissioners, and want to make sure that they understand, how we got here to this place. And so there's also the levy budget that I want to cover. It's broken down into 3 project categories, and I'll explain those more. We want to prioritize certain levy projects, so there's a number of capital projects, and so we've come up with a criteria to do so. And last, we'll end with talking about the Equity Lens Toolkit and how we've applied that to levy projects. So taking a look at this graphic, this is just a real simple pie chart, and it shows the revenue from last year, so 2022. And so you can see that overall, we received about $5.1 million in funding. Obviously, it's not enough, and what I really want you to focus on is just the amount of park fees that we rely on. So that's the lion's share of our budget, and we really depend on park visitation and people using the parks, and it's heavily dependent on the economy. This has been our structure for the past 40 years. Since the timber revenue ran out and general fund has dried up, we have really tried to become self-sufficient on park fees, and it's been very difficult. And so looking at the other two categories there, you see the taxes. You know, we've received no general fund tax support, no property taxes prior to the passage of the levy. And really, when you look at the taxes we do get, these are lodging taxes. So the car rental tax and the transit room tax are paid primarily from out-of-county residents. So when they rent a hotel room or a car, a portion of that does come to Lane County Parks, but it's pretty small. And then the other two taxes there are state taxes. One is a gas tax refund distributed to the counties through the Oregon State Marine Board, and that's dependent on water access facilities and maintenance for those facilities. And then there is the RV or recreational vehicle tax, and so that's distributed to the counties that actually have RV recreation sites. And then the third part of the budget, which is essential, is to have those reserves and contingency there for a rainy day. And so that usually averages around 10 or 11%. So depending so heavily on these user fees, we have really fallen behind in our maintenance. And so with the size of our park system, we have nearly 70 parks, 4,500 acres, and within those parks, 5 campgrounds that are really busy, as well as 3 marinas and organizational camp. There's just a lot of facilities to take care of, and so we've accumulated quite a bit of deferred maintenance over the years. You can see there was a facility condition assessment that was conducted, and it showed that our capital needs, our deferred maintenance, is close to $22 million. And at that time, if we don't make any investments over the next 10 years, that grows to over 38 million. So that just keeps compounding over time. So shortly after I started here in 2018, the board passed the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, and it's a very important document for us. It's really our vision document over the next 20 years. And, you know, it really says that our thriving parks and natural areas are special, and they need to be really protected for future generations. And a key goal within that master plan is generating revenue. And so strategy 4.5 says to really focus on exploring long-term sustainable funding for parks. So I'm going to go over the levy process. This really started, the process really started back in 2019 in June. Went before the board, and there was a motion for the Parks Funding Task Force to be established by the county administrator. And so with that board order, that kind of kicked off the whole process. And so this Lane County Parks Funding Task Force was made up of 10 individuals, and they were throughout the county. So in every region of the county, we had representation. There was a total of 10 meetings over 2 years in 2020 and 2021. The first meeting, I remember Heather was there and Steve, and that was the only in-person meeting that we had. The rest of them were all virtual. So we got a lot done, though. They were able to research and look at different funding strategies. And what they ended up recommending, the core of what they ended up recommending, was a $6 million 5-year local option levy. They also recommended additional general fund as well as car rental and hotel tax to explore some of that. Later on, that was amended, and we just focused on the local option levy at a rate of 16 cents per 1,000 tax assessed value. So the next step was just to go out in the community, get that feedback, and understand what people wanted to see at our parks. And so there were 4 regional meetings that were scheduled, and this gave us a great opportunity to hear what folks wanted to see at our parks, and this helped really make up the budget within the levy. And really, people wanted more access. They wanted more access to water, to nature, to trails, but they also wanted our facilities to be in better condition, especially restrooms. Kept hearing over and over again. Also of great importance was pickleball. So I think that was, of all of the attendance, I think it was mostly folks who were wanting more pickleball in our parks, but other recreation programs like disc golf and was recommended as well. So we took all that information in. Our next step then was we wanted to make sure that we heard from the community at large through 2 surveys. So the first survey was back in March of 2021, and about a year later, in May of 2022, we followed up with a second survey. And we were just asking, what is the general support for a local option levy at that rate, 16 cents per 1,000 tax assessed value, or roughly $38 to $40 a year. And really saw support between 59 and 63%. And so we felt like there was a pretty good recommendation. So then it went on the ballot last November in the general election, and it ended up passing. So, if you look at the surveys, they were just spot on, right? 60.05%. So that was really good to see. So looking at the levy budget, there are 3 main categories. The first category in orange are the park amenities, and that was mainly taken from those facility condition assessments. Those deferred maintenance reports really composed the composition of that piece of the budget. The green section there is operating and maintenance funds, or O&M funding. So obviously we need to be able to keep the parks in good shape, clean, green, and safe and open. And so a lot of that is additional staffing that's needed to do so. And then the other 2 sections, the section there in gray is where we designated special projects. And so the special projects are really fun for us because it gives us an opportunity to work with other organizations and agencies and have cooperative projects. And, one thing that we kept hearing in the community engagement meetings was, people wanted to feel more safe at our parks as well. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then the other section is, we have a dedicated $1 million just for conservation and educational programming.
Brett, I'm sorry, I just want to make it really clear, the last slide you showed is a 5-year, so for folks watching this that saw, the annual budget at $5 million, that was the 22 fiscal year. The slide you just showed is a 5-year representation, so the amount of levy collected over a 5-year period of time, not annually.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, yes. So when we look at our park amenities, again, that was derived from the deferred maintenance reports. And you can look at each one of these subcategories and see that there are significant investments in each one. Obviously, paving and curbs, so that is, our parking lots, our roads, sidewalks, that was the highest amount, followed by restrooms at about $2.5 million. And then about $1 million, a little over $1 million in the rest of the investments. And so these are mainly our capital projects. And so the section, the second section there is really our O&M funding. And, we're really excited to bring on some new employees. In fact, right now we're in the recruiting process. of adding 10 additional employees, and 8 of these employees will go towards our maintenance program. Currently, right now, we only have 7 full-time maintenance staff. So when we talk about these special projects, again, I want to talk about safety. So right now, we're working with the Lane County Sheriff's Office, and we want folks to feel more safe in our parks. One thing that we are noticing is that there is an increase in car break-ins and houseless activity. So by partnering with the Sheriff's Office, we'll be able to have a deputy out there patrolling the parks in the valley, and that's going to be really, really crucial for folks feeling more safe in our parks. The other two, things I want to mention with this funding source is that, we really want to improve access in a lot of different ways: water access, access to nature, and, this really allows us to do so. So we have significant investments with those two categories. And, when you take a look at water access improvements and cooperative projects, this is just a wonderful way that we can, work with the community, provide that access. And, looking at the Eugene-Springfield metro area, at Howard Buford Park, we have environmental education programming, and we have habitat stewardship that we'll be able to work with Mount Pisgah Arboretum and the Friends of Buford Park with that. Also, again, folks really want pickleball, and so we're able to invest in a regional pickleball center there in the Eugene area. Along the McKenzie corridor, as you guys know, was devastated by the Holiday Farm Fire. We're partnering with 3 organizations: the Discovery Center, which right now is out there at the old McKenzie Fish Hatchery. They're working on fundraising for an interpretive building, and we'll be able to give them a significant investment. Also, we're in the Blue River community that was just totally devastated. We're working with the McKenzie River Trust, and they have Finrock Reach, which will provide greater access there up the McKenzie upriver. And so we want to invest at that park. Also, Blue River Park. Blue River Park and Rec District is working on rebuilding their small community park, and we want to give them some funding there for a public restroom. So waterway access facilities. We have one project in each region. So you can see those, the red stars there indicate where we're going to have the waterway access projects. And so that's anywhere from improvements to marinas, to the boarding floats, boat ramps, parking lots, restrooms, anything associated with providing better access to water. And the final section is just dedicated funding towards enhancing our biodiversity in our parks and also educating the public about that. So conservation education programs, we currently have a electric vehicle charging station out at Mount Pisgah Arboretum parking lot, and we'd like to provide a lot more of that structure there for folks as well. And so looking at invasive species removal, looking at these watershed and floodplain restoration projects, we're going to be able to really improve the water quality and just preserve these treasures for future generations through completing these habitat management plans that we have with the parks. So how do we prioritize all these capital projects? We have come up with 7 criteria, and the first and most important, of course, is health and safety. We want to make sure that not only the public but park visitors are safe. There is a lot of crumbling infrastructure, but even beyond that, when you think about the utilities we have, wastewater and potable drinking water, we want to make sure that's in good condition. So the levy gives us a great chance to improve on those. And again, protecting our structures, and that's important because we need a preventative maintenance program. Having that robust program will allow us to preserve those facilities in the future. Obviously, it's important that we make a good first impression, so we're really going to be focusing on the park entrances and making sure that the signage there, as well as the landscaping and irrigation is in good shape. We want to make sure that those entrance roads are also repaired and in good condition. As I said earlier, we want to enhance the biodiversity in our parks. This gives us that opportunity, so we are prioritizing those projects. I want to really take a look at the equity program that Latife is really put together. The equity lens will allow us to improve access by removing some barriers we have at parks. We want to enhance our support facilities. So these facilities are what we have for our staff. We want to make sure that our maintenance buildings are in good conditions. We want to make sure that we have the proper equipment and tools. And then lastly, if we're going to add any new infrastructure, we want to ensure that it will generate net revenue. So this gives us a wonderful opportunity to take a look at the Equity Lens Toolkit and apply that to the levy. So prior to the levy, there were 2 case studies, and they were both conducted by University of Oregon graduate students. The first one, Narratives in Nature. Taylor Bowden, she took a look at, these natural areas, and she focused in on Howard Buford Park and wanted to see if the natural areas were representative of people of color. And what she found is that there's not enough multilingual signage or bilingual signage. There's not enough people out at the park, either visitors or park staff, that reflects the overall community. The second study, Liza Holtz went out and she looked at the trail system and just wanted to see, are those trails accessible? So she focused on those trails that were closer to the Willamette River, and those trails are a little flatter with a less slope, and she pointed out any physical barriers. She took a look at the surfacing, the width of the trails, and are there enough rest areas for folks along there. And she actually designed a couple larger loops, mile or longer, within the Arboretum. One that will be universally accessible, and the second one will be barrier-free. And actually working with Mount Pisgah Arboretum, we've been able to assist them, and will continue to assist them with making those trails more accessible, but they've already completed one loop that is universally accessible. The other area that we're looking at within the park is the North Bottomlands Trailhead. We want to have at least a mile loop going through there, and we'll be working with the Friends of Buford Park, and this levy provides funding to complete that project. So we had an equity workshop back in April, and we wanted to try to figure out what are those barriers to access. And we came up with 4 main categories: cognitive, and that's also includes folks who are neurodiverse, physical. And so when we think about physical, usually that's associated with ADA, but also those folks who are hearing impaired and sight impaired. We wanted recognize that as well. Socioeconomic or financial, we realize that some people cannot afford to go to Lane County Parks because of our parking passes. And also we don't have enough transportation options for folks to reach our parks as well. And lastly, cultural. Again, we want to make sure that we have that bilingual signage. We want to make sure that everybody feels welcome at our parks. And so at that workshop, we identified those barriers, and then we figured out some action plans to address each one. And so these action plans are going to be obtainable over the next 5 years of the levy. And, we're working on a couple right now. One in particular I'll talk about in just a minute is trail access a little bit more, but also we're looking at public transportation options at Howard Buford Park. And so we want to have a pilot study about a year long. We'll work with LCOG and Lane Transit District. And what we want to do is just think about, okay, what kind of options we can provide, like a shuttle service, and how often is it used. And so just kind of collect that data and then come back to the commissioners once we get enough information. And so we're still working on this, and we have put out a public information survey, and that's been out for about 3 weeks or so. And recently we were at the Eugene Pride Festival. We distributed it there, and it's available online right now and in social media. And that survey will be out there through December. And once we collect that information, it'll allow us to really target who we're going to connect with on a more of an individual basis, and then continue that work and find out, are we missing anything beyond what we've already discovered. And, the goal really is to make our parks more universally accessible, not just in our trails, but all of our facilities. And so, the levy will allow us to do more of that. And, so really, really excited to go in that direction. And the last thing I need to mention, and it's under the cultural category, is decolonization. And so we are going to be working on a land acknowledgement statement, and we want to make sure that it's relevant and actionable. And so, currently the county is has its initiative, its intergovernmental tribal initiative, and we want to allow that process to take place before we really start working on that land acknowledgement, but that's coming up. So again, universally accessible trails, and this just shows a couple maps there. The map there on the right in the middle, it shows the barrier-free trails, and there on the bottom it shows the universally accessible trails. Kind of hard to see, but those are a couple loops, and all that information will be, some of it's available now, but when we're finished, it'll all be available to the public. And so it's really important that we focus more on our trail system, not just in Howard Buford Park, but our other parks within the park system. Really the first thing that we're going to do at the beginning of next year is have an ADA assessment, and that assessment will really look at all of our facilities and give us ideas where we can initiate a transition plan. So we're not just looking for ADA compliance. We also want, as I said earlier, to look for universal accessibility within our facilities. And so we have some projects planned, an all-inclusive playground and nature play area at Armitage Park. Also, we're looking at Perkins and a couple other parks for wheelchair accessible ramps. And, that's something that's really lacking in the county as well. So this is the first of 5 planned updates. Currently, we're in the hiring process, and I'll kind of go back to that. And so the levy funding does not actually get deposited into our budget until the end of the year. And so property taxes are still being collected. It will be collected through November. And, whenever that takes place, then we will really start on the projects. However, we do have another operating fund that we've been able to, we can actually take a debit on it until that other funding becomes available. And we wanted to do this hiring now so that we're ready to really get started on the projects at the beginning of the year. So in December, we'll have the results of the equity survey, and also we'll have some projects lined up, some capital projects lined up to update the board on. So I plan on coming back in December. And then I'll be back next year for 2 progress meetings to let you know how projects are going, and get some feedback from the board. And then we'll look at November of next year and, again, give you a preview of the projects that'll be available in 2025. So certainly looking forward to that.
Thank you, Mr. Henry.
Yeah.
And
so
to the
we're
board,
available for any questions.
I'm hoping to hear from Ms. Amato. To the board, we're a little beyond the time that we've allocated to this. This is a very important discussion, so we're going to continue with the presentation, followed by questions and comments from the board. Good morning.
Morning. So we actually have a more in-depth process in my presentation next. I'm here really just to answer any particular questions from Brett's presentation, but we're going to be presenting the levies project in even more detail in the upcoming presentation.
Thank you. I wish we had 2 hours to hear about this, because I personally love your parks, and I think we all do. So at this point, we'll look to the board for questions and/or comments. Around the board, and you're in danger of me starting. Oh, Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any pointed questions, other than I'm very anxious to see the projects start happening in our area. I'm thrilled to know that you're able to start work now and you have a pot of money that can get you going. I think that it would have otherwise been a problem with passing the levy and the people and residents not seeing anything implemented in time for them to see the fruition of their tax dollars. So that's great news. I'm fully supportive of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And hopefully you have a team of volunteers that are helping you out too, because I know that they were very active during the entire run-up to putting this on the ballot. So if you're not getting the support that you're needing in order to move forward, I just hope that you're able to reach out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. Further comments, questions from the board? Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. This is so exciting. Just a quick question. You're currently recruiting for the positions covered by the levy. How's that going? Are there challenges? I just know we're hearing recruitment challenges for workforce.
We really haven't seen a lot of difficulty recruiting so far. Yeah, we're in the process of recruiting our park maintenance staff, and just went through the interview process, had a lot of applications, so I think we're really thrilled about that. I think yesterday we had the park superintendent position that closed, and we have 20 applications for it. So, so far so good, and we'll have the parks planner and designer position coming up, followed by the campground and volunteer host coordinator position. So those will be up soon, and then will be advertised over the next month. And yeah, hope we have a lot of applications and good candidates to choose from. So.
And how are we bringing those folks on, since it's based on limited duration funding?
Just like any of our other full-time staff, we're bringing them on because, we do have funding, through the levy, and we will be going out for the renewal in 5 years. we do figure with 60% or so support that we would have a good chance.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Further comments, questions? Commissioner Seneca.
Yeah, I was down at Public Works the other day and ran into the Parks Department. They were doing interviews, so sounds like they had some great applicants too, which is good. That's positive. But when you and I did our Florence tour and we went and checked out all the parks and the jetties, you'd brought up property for possible ATV use, with it being such a revenue maker right now and a lack of area. Has any more thought gone into that yet, or any ideas on where that kind of place might open up? I know with 126 being as busy as it is, especially on weekends and stuff, it'd be great to find a place over here that was a little more accessible.
Yeah, so that was one of the things we heard when we went to the community meeting over in Florence, was more areas for ATV use. And so obviously we need to be very careful with that because of, there is some sensitive habitat with our parks. But looking at the acquisition of the North Jetty, that land is currently owned by Department of State Lands, DSL. And so working with them, we want to establish a long-term lease. And that's close. That will allow us to really connect Harbor Vista with Hesita Beach, and so a big stretch of property, hundreds of acres. And so, if there's some space there and the need for it, we'll go back to community and see if that's what they want and explore that, knowing that, sometimes there can be impacts to the environment and noise associated with it. But again, it's really important that we go to the public and see what the recreation needs are and try to fulfill those.
Yeah. Awesome. I was almost thinking more on this side so there isn't so much traffic going over to Florence all the time. I mean, they're until something opens up over there, those, as you know, those sand dunes are busy, real busy.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Lovall.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Great work. I think some of the work you're doing about accessibility is really stupendous, really good stuff. I've got a friend of mine who's blind. He was born without eyes, and he keeps yelling at me, Commissioner, when are you going to make more Braille? So I think that's really a great step in the right direction to make all of our stuff accessible. I do have just a couple of questions I need to get my mind clear. Did I hear you say that the levy is going to fund an additional deputy for us to have them patrol like the beats of theme parks? Is that what I heard you say? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We're currently working with the sheriff's office to figure that out. So we have funding set aside in the levy for a deputy patrol. That's correct. There was a little bit of shortfall. We can either cover that within the levy budget, so we do have some flexibility there, or there's some traffic grants out there that we're going to be looking at. So yeah, that's going to be important because we're seeing an uptick in car break-ins, especially out at Mount Pisgah. And I think, hearing from the public is, they just want to feel more safe in our parks. And so with our lack of staffing, we need to kind of supplement that with more patrol.
That's super news. I'm really glad to hear that. The second thing I just need some clarification on, you had mentioned something in your culture kind of slide when you said something about decolonization. And I need a little more clarification on that, because as I understand decolonization, it requires non-Indigenous individuals, governments, institutions, and organizations to create the space and support for Indigenous peoples to reclaim what was taken from them. So I'm not really clear how that works with the park system. Can you help explain that to me?
Yeah, sure. So, what we're really looking at is acknowledgement, right? So, that land was occupied for millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years before Europeans were here in the valley by the Calapoola Indians. And, I think it's important that we acknowledge that. We're not looking at reparations as far as giving land back, but we want them to be more involved through programming. So reaching out to the tribes and seeing what kind of program we can offer at our parks is going to be really important. And just really recognizing the history is what that's about.
So which of the tribes have we reached out to ask what their input is? Have we reached out to any of them?
As I said earlier, there's an initiative that the county has, the intergovernmental. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, I can speak to that now. I will do more in-depth update next. But really, we are starting the work of the intertribal relations work. So how do we really work with our partners as sovereign nations? This work really is under the policy team, not necessarily under the equity team. We're just here to support the process of how to do that in centering the relationships and the needs of the folks that we have not been in relationship with. So as Brett was mentioning, there's a lot of different ways, and we can name some of them, but we're not prescribing them because we're not at a position to do that just yet. Things like naming, things like cultural heritage and artifacts that have been found at our parks, collection for native seeds and native plants. There are ways to honor and to do land acknowledgement. So we have a whole set of ideas of how other governmental entities have done this work, but we're not at the moment of prescribing anything because we're just starting the intergovernmental relations work. So I will speak a little bit more about that work group next, and what our goals are and who the members are and how we plan on going about some of the relationship building that you are mentioning, because it is incredibly important.
So if we approach these indigenous peoples and they have a different idea than what our ideas are we okay with that? I mean, I had a friend of mine who's in the Native American tribes chiefs hierarchy that had called me about this when he saw it on the agenda. And if I can ask you this question, as he asked me, he said, will you please ask them this question? Have you met with or had conversations with the local tribes on how best to honor or partner with them on what they would like to see instead of what maybe they might be virtue signaling? That's what he asked me to ask you. So that's the question I put out to you.
Absolutely. So that is exactly why we are not, we didn't put any ideas on the parks survey around this particular work. That work is sort of on hold until we have the work or the product out of these relation building that we're going to be doing. So absolutely, we're not prescribing anything from a land acknowledgement or then renaming, none of that. These are ideas that have been floated, but we were very intentional about not putting a survey out and asking for opinions about it because we really want to center the voice of those that we should be centering. So yeah.
I'm excited to see what they come back with. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovell. Colonization is an interesting study because a lot of colonization is absorbing the native culture into the colonizer's culture. We see it all the time, and a voice is silenced once that happens. That's the voice of history, and remembering what happened before. We see that all the time. A large part of this is making certain that those voices aren't silenced, that the voices are brought to the forefront, and that we can hear them, and that, in particular, the people whose heritage it is are able to understand and really feel free to articulate the voices. It's pretty exciting to me. This whole, everything we're doing in the levy is particularly exciting. Once again, I love the parks. My family and I spend a lot of time in parks, and what I really love is what we're beginning to see is a multicultural use of the parks. My family is multicultural, but in particular Richardson, which we use a lot, wide open spaces, lots of shady places where large families can gather and have really what are self-contained family experiences inside of the greater picture of the entire park and all the amenities in that particular park. So I can speak to Richardson. And Richardson, I was out there over the summer. I mentioned this to you, Brett, that when we were there, my large family gathering was there, making a lot of noise and a lot of splash. But several times during that day, park staff came by and asked how they could help. And there were a number of different options that they gave to help. They didn't know who the heck I was. Most people don't know who I am wherever I go. And they didn't do it because I was a county commissioner, but I saw them doing it with everybody in the park from one end to the other. And it's an enormous park. So I'm seeing already fruits of the levy paying off in the parks. And beyond that, Richardson is beginning to exhibit signage that is really bilingual signage that really is appreciated, I know, by a lot of people. And it makes it easier for people to bring their entire families there and enjoy it, once again, in what is a kind of concealed, not enclosed, a encapsulated family environment with the picnic tables and the barbecues, et cetera, but in the larger picture of the entire park. It really is wonderful. The thing that Commissioner Lovell talked about is another thing that's important to me and to every single person that uses the parks, and that is safety in the parks, whether it's property safety, personal safety, et cetera. You know that last year, my wife's Mini Cooper was stolen from Richardson Park. Sheriff's Department recovered it, and the sheriff's deputies from Veneta came over and helped with the investigation and helped recover the vehicle. So that did work for us, but we need to make certain that every single person that uses the parks really feels that same kind of presence. And whether it's a patrol of in uniform, it doesn't have to be in uniform, just a feeling of safety from whether it be the park hosts, park staff, just knowing that eyes and ears are present. And you and I have talked about it, Brett, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about how you coordinate with the Sheriff's Department to make certain that they are in full support of what we're doing in the parks. I know the sheriff wants that, and I know that the staff wants that.
Yeah. And I think it's just a sense I get from the public is, they want to feel more secure in our parks. And, since I started back 5 years ago, that's something I've really wanted to be able to ensure. Our public information officer, told me that, she had her car broken into. And I felt terrible about that. And so, how can we improve that? Right now, we're putting some security cameras out there at Mount Pisgah. And that's with just a real limited budget. So just setting some funding aside for that is just really important.
Yeah.
And so, working with the sheriff's office, we'll continue to make our parks more safe.
And it's in no small part what Commissioner Triga, Vice Chair Triga was talking about, that is staffing. We have difficulty staffing the positions, and at the time of the thief broke into the back window and stole the car, but we didn't have a park host for a short period of time there at Richardson because of staffing issues and finding the right people. So really putting our effort into that and making certain that the funded staff positions are filled, that improves the safety. If there'd been a park host there, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And so part of the levy is funding for a campground host coordinator. And so I feel that's really important as far as retention of our hosts. And then we're going to also take a look at the overall caretaker and host program and see how we can supplement that better with staff.
Well, we are in good hands. Thank you for the work that you're doing on this, and thank you for the wise stewardship of the Parks Levy funding and making certain that things happen in a very straightforward, equitable, move-forward way. Look forward to hearing more updates on this. And one final note, pickleball. If you've not played pickleball, get out there, boy, because it is for everybody, every age, and really every athletic ability. It's a great game. So thank you, Mr. Henry. Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Henry, Ms. Amato, excuse me?
No, I just really appreciate the support and just the time of being able to just show the great work that our staff is doing. I like hearing, that your family had a great time and all their needs were taken care of, and that's one of the things.
Well, I recognize that broken dock, and I recognize the cracked pavement. I know those places, and they are getting better. To the board, anything further on this subject? Then this is discussion only, and thank you. We'll look forward to the next update. Thank you. Moving down the agenda, we'll move along to County Administration and a report on our Equity Program Quarterly Update. And Mr. Mokraski, I will turn the floor to you.
I'm going to give my seat up here, and you have Ms. Amato and Mr. Henry, and we're also welcoming Shana Higashi from our Equity Office and Luke Arnold from Health and Human Services. So I'll turn it over to the group. Luke, you can have my seat, and you play County Administrator. Yeah.
All right, well, here we are. Before we actually begin, I'm thinking we start with introductions since we just took Steve Mokrahiski's seat. So why don't we start with Luke? So introduce yourselves, what you work at the county, and then particularly what part of the presentation you're going to be focusing on today.
So my name is Luke Arnold. I'm a supervisor in Lane County Developmental Disabilities, which is in Health and Human Services, as you know. And I am here, a couple of you might remember me, I was on the Equity Lens subcommittee group when that was meeting. I'm currently working on helping Health and Human Services to implement the Equity Lens and all of the various equity program updates in Health and Human Services. I am presenting the Equity Lens portion of the presentation.
Morning, Commissioners. Shayna Higashi, use she, her pronouns. I'm an equity program analyst, and I get to see you 2 times in a month. So it's nice to see you all. I'm going to be presenting on the Equity Program Advisory Board and the Diverse Business Directory, that project that I'm working on.
My name's Brett Henry. I'm the Parks Division Manager, and I've been working with Latife and Shayna on some equity initiatives with the new Parks local option levy. And, we've put out a survey, and we've also had a very productive equity workshop where we've listed a number of barriers to access, and I'll speak to that in just a bit.
All right, and hello, good morning, everybody. Latif Hamado, pronouns she, her, ella, and Equity Program Manager. So here we go. So here's how we're going to be spending our day today. We're going to start with one of our strategic initiatives, which is giving clarity to the structure of our program and the team and all of the different players that support our work here at the county and are implementing the work. And then we're going to just focus on current work updates. So our last update was really focused on the history of the program, giving a lot of light to the beautiful and wonderful work that was done prior to the equity program being staffed by myself and by Shayna. Today, we're really going to be focusing more on what we've been up to on our third phase, which is the operationalizing of the equity lens, and all of the other initiatives. We will also have some additional program updates, which you'll hear Shayna share, and then open it up for questions. So as you know, equity is really integrated into everything that the county does. So these are all of the different initiatives where equity is called out. And it also lives within our vision, our purpose, our values, and one of our strategic lenses, which is the equity lens as well. So we are really trying to be intentional. In last board meeting, Commissioner Trieger, Vice Chair Trieger, you wanted to hear a little bit more from the folks that are implementing the work. And I think that is really important because it's really not us, setting necessarily the stage or the initiatives, but supporting folks in really achieving the aspirations that they've set forward in their strategic plans. So here we are with a focus deeply into the Parks levy and really focus on our process. How have we applied the Equity Lens toolkit in that process to ensuring that we have community voice in the equity levy funds, how they're spent? So here we are. This is the third phase. We are in the operationalizing, which is really about continuous improvement of our existing systems, like our equity lens, and some of the frameworks that we have utilized to set the foundation for the work. So if we were to just look at the strategic initiatives, here's sort of a broad update of what we're doing. So first I'll start with the little blue tabs that you see there. So these are pilot projects which means basically that you're spending a lot of time with Shayna and myself utilizing and trying on the Equity Lens toolkit. There are a lot of different tools, and our purpose for that is to really try to identify all the different barriers of where our county employees might face in trying to apply the Equity Lens toolkit to the work that they do. So these are very, very in-depth projects. We're trying on tools, figuring out where we get stuck, and trying to find solutions. And really the ultimate purpose here is that after these pilot projects, we'll be able to really have an Equity Lens toolkit that we can say, hey, this is sort of our tool, our permanent for now tool that we want different employees to engage with after we've done some of that work of identifying the barriers. What you see with the little somewhat completed check mark are the initiatives that are in progress. So we are currently looking at our equity training. As you know, we have a 3-hour requirement for all county employees. For equity training, if you are new to the county, you do the DEI 101 training currently with Dr. Bailey's group. But we're really trying to figure out what happens after that, right? We've had most of our employees do the DEI 101 and new employees, and then what do we want to do next? So we are looking at our DEI competencies at the moment. We have our staff engagement survey that's going to give us some data and information on what we want to see moving forward for our training. So we're looking at that through a subcommittee out of the Equity and Education Committee that's trying to use evidence to make some of those decisions. And then the equity strategic plan, also in progress. I will talk a little bit more about that when I get to that slide. But our hope is to have our equity strategic plan completed by the end of this year. And then finally, what you see in purple, data collection and the equity strategic plan. So those have been really the top priorities for our equity program. As you know, we have the new Office of Data and Analytics, and we have the equity program, both relatively new to the county. And we are really trying to find ways on how our work is going to support each other, because we see that there's a massive, if you imagine a Venn diagram, so much of our work is really in the middle, but trying to figure out how do we bring both of these initiatives and programs together to really support the work is something that county administration has identified as one of our top priorities. All right, so it's not a super clearly defined, it's not a nice little graphic. So I guess the main thing to note here is that the equity program is in conversation and in partnership with a lot of different individuals at the county. So we think about the equity program as sort of the hub to collecting information, ideas, and even decision-making to all the different partners at the county. So we're really sort of a hub, and we're trying to figure out a process to streamline some of this a little bit more effectively and with more transparency. So there are two core groups that are our thought partners. It is the equity core team. These folks work with us to figure things out, like what is going to be our strategic plan? Is this the framework or is this the framework? What do we do with our competencies? So they're really are sort of co-designers in this work. And also our Equity Program Advisory Board, which Shayna will be speaking a little bit more about. And those are two established groups that support us. One is community-facing, one is internal employee-facing. But we also have other partners that collaborate with us from program staff. As you see, we have two folks here from different departments, our employee resource groups, and other sort of partners in the work. And the idea is that together we're creating these proposals that then go to the decision makers. So what you see down here is our Equity and Education Committee. These are the folks that help us make decisions as to what moves forward to the right people, right? If it's an internal policy, does it go to our directors? Does it go to our county administrator? Does it come to the board? So they're the ones helping us make some of those decisions. Under that, we also have these subcommittees that are really our work groups, our communication strategy. Again, I mentioned talking the transparency piece being really important. And we are trying to figure out how do we really get to every single employee of the county? How do we communicate with community best? And then from there, it goes to the decision-making folks, so our county administrator, directors, our board of county commissioners, or our staff. So it's a little bit messy, but there are very distinct buckets of the thought partnership and then the decision makers that bring proposals to the decision makers, which are often the folks in the highest leadership positions. I also wanted to take a moment to just mention we have added new members to our equity core team, so these are our thought partners. I think one thing that's really important to note here is the departmental representation. So we really set out a recruitment effort to ensure that we had diversity in departments, that we had diversity in how long people have been at the county. So we have folks that have been here like 18 years, some folks that have been here a couple of months. So it's just super exciting to be able to bring all these folks together and help us determine what our equity strategic plan moving forward will be. So in terms of our equity strategic plan, so this work is to be completed by the end of the year. And it's really going to be an effort between the equity program and the equity core team to create the strategic plan and then bring forward to the decision makers for approval. We're doing a retreat in the fall, so it's coming up in actually 3 weeks, where we're going to be focusing on team building since we do have new members to the team. We're going to explore and analyze frameworks. So there's 2 frameworks that are really important to the work. Our existing framework, which is GARE, the Government Alliance for Racial Equity, and also the Othering and Belonging Institute. The folks that are part of those 2 organizations are the same people, so they're the same brains, the same hearts and minds, but really thinking of different frameworks to bring the work forward to different contexts around the county. We're going to be examining our existing equity strategic plans. We have a racial equity plan and others that have been sort of built in pockets of work, and we're going to utilize all of that to build the strategic plan and bring it to completion by the end of this year. All right, this data collection. This is a long, messy journey, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But what we know is that we're bringing our 2 programs in our office, the Office of Data and Analytics and the Equity Program together for a super in-depth collaboration. So both Taina Saltishak, our manager of data and analytics, and myself sat down and created a sort of general path of what we think this process might look like. And we're bringing our teams together in a couple of weeks to really figure out what is going to be that plan. It is probably going to be a lengthy plan, not something that we're going to solve overnight, because there are 2 new programs and we're still sort of figuring out all the different relationships and players, and really focusing on change management as well. Capital building projects and maintenance. So this one is really exciting because it's very tangible, unlike a lot of the other work that we often get called to do. This one is really creating a toolkit that's very specific to how we look at new builds, how we look at remodels, and how we look at our deferred maintenance plans. And really focus on procurement, on having design standards that we can communicate that really bring together our values as an organization so that we can communicate that anytime we're doing a bid for any sort of project, really be able to center and speak to the values that we have in terms of how we design physical spaces. Also a way to prioritize deferred maintenance plans and also community engagement. So this one also is sort of in the beginning stages. We're in the research phase right now with our capital projects team. And yeah, we will bring forward something soon. Community engagement. So this one is a big one. It lives in various places in our strategic plan. So I just put all 3 of them together. Not that all 3 of the initiatives are the exact language, but at the really heart of it is how do we engage our communities in a meaningful and an authentic way that gives them voice, that there's transparency. Sometimes we sit down, we have listening sessions. We're like, yes, let's take all of your feedback, but then it doesn't actually get implemented. And that could be for various reasons, right? Sometimes some of the voices go into the voice. Sometimes some of the things that we're getting feedback on are not things that people should actually be giving feedback on, right? So how do we really operate from a place of transparency so that people that are giving us their time to show up and give us feedback, whether it be through a survey or a listening session or public comment, we can close the loop on that communication and give us an opportunity to start building more trust in the work that we do. So there are 2 projects that are being piloted with this particular initiative. It's both the Parks Levy project and the Stabilization Center. Now, I say the Stabilization Center, but it's a very small pocket of the Stabilization Center work. So for the Stabilization Center work, we really wanted to center the voices of folks that had lived experience. So when we go out and do a listening session, when we create a survey, how do we both collect the data, analyze the data in a way that centers those folks who the center is actually going to serve? So what you see here is an incredibly messy and packed slide. And what I want to really focus on is that the purple that you see here are the different tools in the toolkit that we have been utilizing in this particular process. Ultimately, the goal here was to create a survey that gave the community an opportunity to give us feedback and using that voice to then make recommendations to the board as to some aspects of the stabilization center. We focused on design, we focused on entry, like who do you want to work with when you first walk in? What should the physical space look like? Should it be a private, smaller room? Should it be more open? What type of music? What type of environment? So we asked all these questions that, again, have a very direct connection to an actual recommendation that's going to come either to the board or to the design firm, and with community using this as an opportunity to also build some data literacy. So this has been our journey. We created a survey. We created an incredibly targeted approach to get this survey out to the very hands of the people who we want to hear from. And this Friday, in like 2 days, we're going to be analyzing the results with the community members that helped us in this effort. One of the things I'll name is it's a kind of celebration. We had set a super audacious goal of 70% of our survey takers being folks with lived experience, and we got to 68%. The survey is now closed, but we were really dreaming really big, and we got to 68%, which I think is just such a wonderful the thing to show of how much effort has gone to really center the voices, but we got there, and it was all done through the DEI committee from the Stabilization Center group members. All right, I'm going to turn this over back to Brett, who's going to speak about the process more than, take it away, Brett. I'm done talking.
Yeah, so as Latife mentioned, we're really trying to connect with those folks who have lived experiences. And so there's a whole process in place. And really, we had some conversations before the workshop in April, but that workshop that we had gave us the time, and we got the feedback that we needed, looking at the different barriers to access in county parks, as well as looking at the action plans where we can put into action over the next 5 years during the life of the levy. And so next slide. And so this kind of trail is the process involved. And as I mentioned in the previous board item there in my presentation, case studies. So there were 2 initial case studies conducted by graduate students from the University of Oregon. One was centered more around culture in our parks and our natural areas, is a representation of the entire community. And they looked at the Mount Pisgah Arboretum, and they noticed that, there was great signage there, but not a lot of bilingual and multilingual signage. There is some programming there, for Latinos and Latinas, but there's not enough funding that's been dedicated towards that. We'll be able to add to that with a local option levy. There's some dedicated funding working with, is it still Central Latino? La Plaza now, and bolster those programs, so we're really excited about that. So the second case study centered more around physical disabilities in our trail system. So we had the graduate student that assessed our trails for their condition, the surfacing, the width, slope, are there enough rest areas, and made some recommendations for universal accessibility and barrier-free access. And so with these initial case studies, it's allowed us to then move forward, getting that information with the workshop. And that workshop, again, we were able to get these action plans, put those into ideas and see if we were missing anything. And really, I think this is a very comprehensive approach that Latife and her staff have put together to make sure that everything is centered on lived experiences and that nothing is missed along the process. We've designed a survey, as you can see there, and this survey will allow us to take a look at those barriers of access, get that information out to people, get their input on, are these barriers substantial, get that feedback. We have a number of action plans already established under each barrier, and so it enables them to rank those barriers. So all that information will allow us then to have more targeted communication approach moving forward. And so, again, these are the categories of access that we want to improve: cognitive, physical, financial or socioeconomic, and cultural. And then, again, the cultural part, also includes looking at decolonization. And so this is a tiered approach. As you look at the pyramid there, the base of it is more broad-based in nature, and that's where we kind of have started, right, with looking at social media, the website, and just getting as much information as possible, and then we can continue to kind of focus our information as we filter through the process and get some more of that community feedback, looking at targeted organizations that have information to share with us. So this is just a really great approach. And so what do we have left to do? We'll get the information from the surveys in December. We'll analyze that, and then we'll kind of huddle back together and come up with a plan to go back to the community with that information and get more feedback.
So before I pass the mic over to Luke, I wanted to speak a little bit more since there were some questions about this. So when we're looking at a very targeted distribution, we want to make clear that it's not, so this particular survey for the Parks Levy is specifically asking questions around the projects that came out of that design session. So each one of these buckets, with the exception of the decolonization work, because again, we didn't feel like we had the right people in the room to even make any sort of recommendations on projects, but the cognitive, physical, socioeconomic, and cultural all have these, a list of projects that the community imagined and aspired. They're like, all these things sound amazing, and now we're just gonna go out to community and help them, help us rank some of those. And in this tiered approach, when you see at tier 3, we're collecting the data and the information in a way that will tell us, like, hey, we actually haven't heard from enough people around the physical, that have physical disabilities to be able to rank and make decisions about this project. So now we need to really have a more tiered approach to go out and get those voices. So we really want to try to bring the data forward from the survey and make decisions. Do we close? Do we feel confident that we've heard from enough of the folks that this would actually affect and center their voices? Or have we not done enough outreach and now we have to do a very one-on-one approach, which is sort of what we did with the stabilization center. So we're really moving up sort of this tiers and using that data in the process, not just at the very end when the survey closes and be like, okay, we put it out for 3 months, but instead, what are our checkpoints? What feels like a good number where we can say with confidence that, this is the way that we're going to rank them. And then the other layer to this is that we also need to be mindful that we need to work with our park staff to determine if what community is sort of aspiring, is that also feasible? How does it fit in with the established priorities of the Parks Levy? How does it fit in with all of those different lenses? Because it really is a partnership. So it's that Venn diagram, what's in the middle that we can really give community what they want and aspire to, but also make sure that it is realistic and feasible within the boundaries that we have, which are really financial. So. All right, we're going to shift a little bit. So, and I'm going to pass it over to Luke, who's going to speak more specific about what we've learned in trying to apply our equity lens across the county. So thank you, Luke.
So in July, Latife and I we were invited to present a presentation at the ICMA's Equity Summit. They had a virtual Equity Summit. The ICMA, as you know, is the International City County Management Association. And so this is a very shortened version of our presentation with kind of some key takeaways. So as you can see, kind of lessons learned were to continue to identify and remove barriers. It takes work to identify and remove barriers to implementation of the equity lens. To create various paths, that means to have a variety of techniques and methods to operationalize the toolkit. Support your people, really meaning our people, People expected to apply the equity lens need to be supported both in using and applying the equity lens tools and in group facilitation. There's actually multiple contexts we're asking, I'm talking specifically about employees here, multiple contexts in which we're asking employees to use the equity lens. And then communication and change management are important. The need for communication is ongoing and should happen at really on multiple levels of the organization. And then you can see in the purple pop-out, we put some change management principles. That means that to fully adopt a change, people need these 5 things. So those 5 things are awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And in sort of our efforts to implement the equity lens, there have been some bumps here, which are very understandable, I think, given the stage we're at. But we are sort of specifically identifying where in those 5 change management principles we need to focus more energy on with certain groups of staff. Create multiple entry points. So several individuals and groups actually have given the equity program feedback that a simpler tool, it's really accessible and usable in a number of different contexts. As you know, the equity lens toolkit is very large. And there's a bunch of very useful tools. Latife and Brett talked about a couple of them specifically. We have a lot of staff in a lot of different places when it comes to using an equity lens. And so we've identified a need to have a 1 to 2 page tool that is usable for those short, we've got 30 minutes, we're talking about a decision, a project, we want to bring in the equity lens. How can we do that without it taking 4 hours, 8 hours, 20 hours? That's a barrier, essentially, that we've identified. Consider spectrum of proficiency. This means, similar to kind of what I was just saying, everyone's at a different place. And for a lot of different reasons, sometimes that's familiarity with the equity lens, sometimes that's how much they've used it or haven't used it. Sometimes it just means they're using it in a very different context than what they're used to. And then, of course, people come from all different experiences and backgrounds and ideas personally in their lives and in their, in their work roles. So really to create, kind of back to the previous point, to create multiple entry points for people so they can engage with the toolkit. Manage expectations. Celebrate small wins is something we've received feedback about. When you have a long-term equity plan and there's things that are taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's easy for sort of people on the ground doing the work to kind of lose, like, okay, why is this thing that I'm doing right now important, that big picture? They may not be able to see the big picture. So really identifying for people, like, why is that important? And then when we accomplish something, like actually telling people and celebrating that. And then build trust for community engagement. As I think we've already talked about some today, we have work to do with many community partners and organizations to build trust and engage with them where they are coming from in conversation and dialogue, not just, I think as we've already talked about, not just saying like, oh, here's what the county is doing, are you on board or not, but really saying, you're part of this too. And this, for us, we've identified takes humility and patience as we develop connections and really show that we care about the interests of community residents organizations more than just saying we do. How can we sort of show that in our actions?
Thank you, Luke. All right, so moving on to other equity program updates. So not the Equity Lens Toolkit, but other things that we're sort of working on. So first, starting with the Intergovernmental Tribal Relations Group, I want to give an update on an ask from a couple of years ago where we're at in that process. We're going to talk about equity in committees, which is another board ask from a couple of years ago, and how we're starting to engage in that work, and then our diverse business directory. So in 2021, there was a request for staff to look into ways that we might incorporate a regular land acknowledgement into our meetings. That really stemmed a million other questions and conversations about what does it mean to really do this work. I think to your point, not just doing it because everybody else is doing it or for, performance, but really what would that mean? And there's been a lot of work recently around land acknowledgements really being paired to action. So what are we going to do? Yes, acknowledging is great and it is often the first step, but how are we actually going to make changes to ensure that we are in actual relation and not just in relationship like we like each other, but in government, right? These are governments, sovereign nations, and how do we start to treat them with the same level of attention that we do other governmental partners? So here's where we're at. We've been meeting for a couple of months in a smaller group to really develop our work plan. What would this work look like? I'll mention that the City of Eugene has been doing this work for a little bit longer, and they've been incredibly graceful with their time in helping guide our own process and how they've engaged with all of the different tribes in Lane County or starting their initial engagement. So we have an intergovernmental tribal relations group. Our first official all meeting is coming up in a couple of weeks, but we have been meeting with a smaller group of individuals. And really the goal here is to establish an intergovernmental team that's going to foster the meaningful engagement with our local tribes. We want to recognize the importance of building strong relationship with tribal communities. We aim to establish a foundation of trust, respect, collaboration, recognizing tribes as sovereign nations, and ensuring their perspectives are considered in our decision-making process. So these efforts are going to lay the groundwork for a new era of collaboration. We really think that it's going to be a long road just to establish relationship and then really sort of move up into those different levels of collaboration that I know many partners within the county are aspiring and wanting, but we want to really be holding that process to stay true to the relationship building. What do they want to be in a relationship with us? What would that relationship look like? What is their best way of working together? Every single tribe has different treaties, so for us to even have that base knowledge is going to be part of the work that this group does. So these are our established members at the moment, and everyone plays a very particular role here. I didn't name all of that because that's a lot of text on the slide, but we have land and water representatives, we have relationship sort of keepers, we have the policy team, we have a liaison between this group and other county employees. When we put out a call to join this team, we had a lot of employees email us. I think we have a list of 20 other stakeholders at the county that really want to be involved in the work, but we recognize we can't do this sort of work in a super large environment. So these are sort of selected folks. Including public safety, public health. Jeff Kincaid and I are really more the process. We're just here, to ensure that we're staying true to our charter group work. All right, the equity and committees. So this was another commissioner assignment from 2021, and it was to bring back a discussion on our committee process and what is the right and best path forward towards equity. This is also a really big question, and I think what we've landed on is that part of it is the equity program, but it's really more a county-wide ask. So our idea here is that we're going to create a work group and start by doing some research. So what are some different application processes, both internally, it's really an audit of our internal processes, but also what are our other counties doing so that we have all that information. And then really create plans to reduce barriers. So this language actually came a lot from the work that with Brett of what are the different barriers to people having equitable participation in committees. Where the equity program is going to take the lead is in identifying financial barriers, cultural barriers, and physical barriers. But there's also structural barriers internally that, we might do all this work and have this amazing application and have a diverse group of candidates into our pool, but then that doesn't necessarily reflect what's in our committees. So how do we figure out all of the different paths to really have the folks that we say we want to have at the table? And after that, we're gonna come back with some recommendations. Some of that research is already starting as we're reestablishing our advisory board. I'm going to hand it over to Shayna, who's going to speak a little bit more about that.
So I'm going to provide an update on the Equity Program Advisory Board. It was previously known as the Equity and Access Advisory Board, and we are now working with a consultant. We've kind of finished an information gathering portion, and so now we're starting to kind of reevaluate what the framework would be like to get this advisory board up and running again, and kind of the different aspects. And so I'm kind of just telling where we are in that process. I found a quote in research that kind of was powerful as we begin this work, and it's about there rarely being structures in place to reduce power differentials among participants. And I wanted to kind of turn that back to our advisory board, and that public participation environments often lack these structures too, that kind of mitigate these power differentials. And so Latife briefly talked about the barriers that we've kind of looked at. We're kind of looking and exploring what a barrier removal model looks like, and looking at the different barriers that are in place related to participation and people being able to participate as their full authentic selves. And so when we look at these differentials in power, often financial and physical barriers are often considered, and cultural barriers are often left out or lacking. And so that's an area that we're also bringing into this process to look at. In the parentheses below, you can kind of see some brief examples of barriers that might relate to some of those areas. So financial barriers, a lot of times transportation may be, and access to transportation to get to the venue that they're going to be having a public convening session. Childcare, oftentimes for parents and people that have families, depending on the times, which also relates to those physical barriers of the meeting space and accessibility. Is a public building always the best place? Hybrid meetings are now something that is often done as a way to kind of assist with the accessibility, but looking at some of that. And then the location is, Linn County is large, right? And so is Eugene, Springfield the only cities that we have here? No. And so what does location and accessibility of these meetings also look like with the advisory board? And I wanted to highlight really briefly, just around going back to the cultural barriers. I got to look further. I like doing research too. And so there was a study done by Melendez and Hoff, and it talked about some cultural barriers experienced. And their research was more focused around those that have immigrated or the first or second generation immigrants. But I think this also is reflective of some of the groups that we talked to that are either people related, connected to, or leaders of organizations or community groups that serve often underrepresented or minority groups. And two barriers that they found in this research was, one, communication challenges. And that can be in a number of ways, right? It could be language translation. It could just be public meeting laws, that there's a whole list of boxes we have to kind of check to have the meeting go in a way that's kind of proposed. And then the other thing is just imposter syndrome, and that's the self-perception that one does not have the right credentials to participate in that space. And so that could be like a lack of education, their background experience, and that can also be a barrier for someone to participate in that deliberation process. And it could give the feeling like they don't belong necessarily to the group. And so these are kind of stuff that we're looking at as we look into further the structure of this board, and really being intentional as the equity program and using our equity lens, our tools that we have to kind of pilot and implement and include a lot of these ideas and values to show that we can also model a lot of these beliefs that we want to also see across the organization. So that's kind of where we're at with this. So we are finishing up the information gathering, and we're going into what we've called phase 2 and are kind of planning the framework of what reestablishing this looks like.
Got it.
Well, thank you. And Vice Chair Trigger has asked me to do a time check.
Yes, I was
So
about to
we
say
had we have about 12 more minutes, but I'm prepared to go beyond. Let's not cut this short and really allow for the board to have questions. So Ms. Mata, back to you. Shana, thank you very much.
Yeah, I think we have one more slide, and then we'll open it up to questions. So maybe, yeah, so maybe this last one.
So another project that I've been working on is the Diverse Business Directory. This builds upon and expands what we have currently as our Black-owned business directory that was started, I believe, in like 2020 is when it kind of was established. And so now I have been working on a project to expand this and hopefully that it will become a resource that we use both internally and externally and have as a community resource for diverse businesses that we have available and that people can kind of filter out different businesses, different identities that people are voluntarily selecting when they submit their information. And really going back to kind of that how this diverse businesses is vital in kind of fostering economic development, promoting equity, and really that sense of belonging and representation. So this is a visual, and this is, again, just, it's still being developed. This is an example of what we're hoping that it could look something very similar. So currently we are working with the data and analytics team to kind of create a Tableau dashboard. There's also programmers working behind the scenes to kind of help put all this information together, but hopefully to have something visual in the sense that we could have as a resource here to show our different diverse businesses in the county and have it where people can search and find that they want to use it. And then just really briefly, what the future looks like is that we've started to schedule meetings with other programs and departments that might be able to use this as a resource or have information and expertise. And so we're starting to discuss what collaboration could look like to get their feedback. We have one with our community and economic development team coming up this week to kind of get their feedback and input also. And then starting to reach out to organizations and other groups that might be able to disperse the information so that we could have more businesses submit their information into this directory resource.
That is way cool. Thank you.
Open it up to questions. Thank you. Sorry about the time.
Apologies not necessary. This is an important subject. We've been waiting a long time to make this presentation. So I'll look to the board for questions and or comments. And you're in danger of me starting. Okay, there we go.
I always get you out of trouble, right?
Yeah. There's a pattern. Okay.
I'm thrilled to see all the work that you've been doing. There's such a huge body and a number of committees. I didn't realize there were so many in really delving into different aspects of equity. I couldn't be more proud that Lane County is implementing this and getting the feedback from employees and residents specifically and really putting people first and authenticity first. That's always, the first, I think, hiccup to some people really wanting to participate because they don't necessarily want it to be performative. And it's a slippery slope to performative work and equity. And that's not what Lane County is dedicated to. We're dedicated to the authenticity of implementing equity and the inclusivity of all of our staff. That I can't believe they had like 20 extra people who were interested in the tribal relations intergovernmental work. That's outstanding. And people are so willing to volunteer and step up to the plate to advance our goals in the county. I can't say enough about the staff at Lane County. We have impressive people. And this work really is systemically ingrained through all of our divisions. And it makes a difference when we go out to speak to people, because even when I speak at groups at the state level sometimes, they wonder what we're doing. And I'm able to share it because you come here often and are able to talk about really specific key initiatives that we're working through, and willing to speak to people who may have differing views. And what does that mean for our work as a whole? And we learn from each other that way. You had brought up, just as an example, the equity in our committees, for example. I talked to some members where just the way that the announcement is written brings a barrier to people who think they're not qualified, let alone want to reach out and say, hey, I can actually do that. And a lot of people don't know, like, if you want to be on the finance committee or whatnot, or our budget or performance auditor, you don't have to be a professional in that particular area in order to become a volunteer that does really wonderful work that informs what we do. And that's kind of the structural stuff that comes along with ensuring that people have the opportunity to reach out and be part of their public governmental infrastructure. And it changes the direction sometimes in which we vote. So I'm really glad that we're starting to go down that route and do the research that's needed. That was one that I'm pretty passionate about. And just as a whole, thrilled to see all your good work coming forward, and I look forward to where it goes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Further comments from the board? Commissioner Lovell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, great work. Everything you guys are doing is super good. I couldn't help, Latife, to count on my hands how many times you said that the work is messy. So when you look back at the tape, you realize how many times we talked about that. Yeah, I think it's multi-layered. I think messy may be, I would hope, sending a different signal, because when people tend to look at things that are messy, their trust kind of maybe isn't trusting things that are messy. So I'm hoping we can kind of change that dialogue a little bit. That would be really awesome. And I think that all of you had put forth a spirit that you're willing to look at everyone's perspectives, and that means everyone's perspectives, because I think, you know, with DEI work, there's a certain group of people that think that they're being demoted so others can be promoted. So I think it's great that you're allowing everyone to come to the table. And I think, Shana, what you said about imposter syndrome, do I belong here with my credentials, was really a foundational statement in this whole thing for me. You know, there's people who obviously don't feel they belong based on life experience, identity, maybe exclusivity or inclusivity. I mean, I think that's a really great heading to go forth. And just this morning, I read something that kind of ties in with that I think because you put forth a quote, I'm going to give you another one. It said that real change and equity in a democracy may depend on allowing random people to lead. I thought that was a really great thing I read this morning. I think you're kind of embodying that there's people that are destined to lead that don't know they could be great leaders. And I think this program works to achieve that. So good on y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for the discussion. Commissioner Seneca.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that Lovell mentions messy, because I wrote down, thanks for the chutes and ladders map. But really, it holistically makes you look at it and think about this one project or this one simple question can lead down an entire different avenue and start another subcommittee. And the fact that you guys are grabbing each one of those and holding on to it and explaining how it works, how do you, it makes it tough to set timelines, to set goals when where does the work stop, right? I did have one question for clarification. Going through where was it? I've mixed around so many times, going back and forth. But the business recommendations, or what'd you call it?
Diverse business directory?
Yeah. So what's that going to look like? What are the parameters for that? How do we decipher who meets that goal and who doesn't?
Yeah, so I can let Shayna speak to the categories, but it is self-identification. So people self-select the different identities that they belong to, and there's different ways to filter. But Shayna, I don't know if you know them at the top of your head. I could probably look it up if needed. But some of the different identity layers that we're including and trying to elevate in this directory.
Yeah. One is by the category of the business, and then the self-selection that people can voluntarily select is, let's see, it's reflective of like Google, similar to some of the Google business identities that they have on there. Black-owned, Asian-owned, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander-owned, Latinx, Latino, trying to think what else. Indigenous owned, I don't know what else.
Yeah, we have
people with a
people with a disability owned. We have veteran owned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ones.
Yeah.
I was just kind of curious because that is one thing that gets a slippery slope mentioned earlier. I don't know if we want to get into the business of recommending businesses, but that would be something that I would like some parameters set before we posted something like that. I was trying to figure out what your legend was, but I'm guessing it's probably somewhere what the different dots mean, different colors or
Yeah.
what have you. But
So
yeah,
it is a mock-up. So we currently have a Black-owned business list, and the idea is to expand it to really create a directory. So it's not a recommendation per se, but it's a directory and giving people a way in which to sort through different businesses. You know, oftentimes in our equity initiatives, we say, hey, you know, this thing is happening this month, for example. One of the things we can do is go and support a Black-owned business. So for example, August was Black Business Month, and, you know, folks are like, great, but where do I look that up? So we're really, if anything, giving people a tool in which to filter and sort that information. So when they're making a decision to potentially invest in different businesses for whatever reason that might be, they have a tool in which to sort that out. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Just a general comment and then one very specific question. My general comment is just appreciation because I always say, like, equity is not a discrete, separate project. It is both the container in which we hold all the work and the through line for each piece of the work. So this really helped demonstrate that, with what you presented, the examples you gave with the Parks Levy, with the Stabilization Center, and I know there's lots more to come. I know over at DDS, you're doing a lot in that area. So I'm looking forward to more updates around how we're operationalizing the work. My really specific question is just a terminology on might have been on the chutes and ladders graph. There was a phrase that said targeted universalism.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what that means? Thank you.
Sure. So when we were looking at the survey, we wanted to make sure that we had a universal goal. So our goal was that we were going to get a certain number of surveys distributed. And then a targeted approach was, well, if we want to really get, say, 70% of people with lived experience, we have to create targeted strategies and supports. So it's an idea that came out of the Othering and Belonging Institute, in which you have a universal goal, like, you know, say 100% of Lane County residents are going to have access to housing, right? Audacious universal goal. But how we get there is going to really require us to use data and look at where people are in their positionality, right? Whether it's race, whether it's, socioeconomic, whether it's disability, whatever markers we decide to look at, and create specific targeted strategies to close those gaps. And it also just gives an opportunity to look at intersection as well, so that, we can look at, well, okay, let's say that we really want to focus on, women with children in our unhoused population, how to look at that through even different lenses, their socioeconomic status, their race, maybe a disability or a known disability. So that's really what that term is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Vice Chair. And I have a few quick comments, but really, in general, this is a wealth of information. that kind of came, not really like a fire hose, because you kind of dribble things out, dribble's not the right word, but you give us information as we go along, and it's not as if we wait for moments in time for you to give us information, and we don't want to wait for moments in time for you to give us information. As things need to be addressed as we move along, of course. You know, Ms. Amato, you and I spend time away from the building talking quite often. Our last lunch engagement, we ended up having a birthday party instead, which was kind of fun. But really an opportunity to not just make this a dialogue where we talk about it once every quarter or once every now and then, but really it is an ongoing part of the way we actually operate. And, you know, Luke, a couple of things that you said really jumped out to me. I'm not going to dwell on them too much right now, but exhibiting patience. You use the word patience at least once, and I think that's really a part of the work that we're doing, is being just patient enough. Patience isn't something that we have to live with, but patience is something that it really is a necessary part of making certain that things do happen in the prescribed order. And you talk about strategically identifying how we move forward, and I love strategically identifying areas of improvement. And very significantly, you know, back to, well, I'm not going to, we can talk more about this at length, but I really want to really say that I appreciate the presentation this morning. And I have a lot to say. Maybe I'll say more, hang on till the end of the meeting, at the end of the afternoon, and I may say a little bit more as we get to other items from commissioners, rather than belabor it as we go past the lunch hour. But really, thanks for being here this morning. Great presentation. Mr. Mokrajski, thank you for assembling the panel and bringing everybody forward this morning. There's been a work in progress for a long time, and it continues to be a work in progress. So with that, Ms. Amato, anything you'd like to add before we conclude the item?
No, just thank you for your time. I think, you know, moving forward, let's really consider how these updates come to the board, because it can be a lot if we're just updating on all the things we're doing, or if instead we want to start to focus in on maybe one or two projects at a time. So maybe that can be further discussion. That way, you know, we're not scheduling a 3-hour board meeting to give you an update on everything we're doing.
In fact, you know, which part of the presentation would we all like to speak about today? Well, if we can narrow it down to different, more strategically targeted areas of the presentation, then it'll be easier to have a dialogue with the board at this point. But with that, thank you very much once again for being here this morning, and we'll conclude this item of business and look forward to working with you all.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Mr. Mokrajski. We have time for your announcements. Now, if you have
like, Chair, we can push it to this afternoon. I had a fire update, and then I asked Mr. Kyler will be available this afternoon to update the board on the Forest Trust issue that you requested last week.
With the board's approval, let's go ahead and move the bulk of your announcements to this afternoon, because I think there's some substantive information there that we'd like to have a little bit of back and forth on. Anything, any bullet points that you'd like to add before the noon break?
I can give the fire update now if you want, but we're kind of past the hour, so maybe it's better to let you.
Fire update now, or shall we wait until the end of this, the end of today's business? I think the feeling there is let's wait until later on that, Ms. Mokrajski. We have no reason for executive session this morning, and other business will be concluded at the termination of the full agenda today. With that, until 1:30, when we will return back to Harris Hall, we are adjourned.